Yo, 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 yo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's good, my brother?
Man, what's going on, dude?
Man.
Funny difference a week makes, man.
I know, right?
We were talking last week. Your boys in Chicago were doing fine. My Knicks in New York were doing fine. And now we're right back to the stars have aligned and we're right back to where we need to be.
Yeah.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph, dude. I've been so pissed watching the Knicks dude, we can't hit shit, bro.
Yeah.
We cannot hit water if we fell out of a boat. You can't tell me a bunch of grown-ass men who play basketball for a living can't make a shot. Like yesterday, you think Austin Rivers coming off the bench would have had more than one shot made yesterday?
Ouch.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, and then the Bulls.
Again, I enjoy the effort, but God bless, make a shot.
Yeah, effort. You got to stop giving points for effort now, you know? Like, it's the points for effort thing is all done now, you know? It's like the Bulls gave up a 24-point lead to Oklahoma City yesterday. You know, no more points for effort for our teams, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like all the E for effort points. Man, we need to throw those out. Those aren't getting us wins.
No, not at all.
I need wins.
Yeah.
God bless.
I mean, the thing is,
What?
you know, I think you'll probably say the same thing, but when you have like a real coach on the bench, you really start to notice like, oh, we've just been garbage this whole time because we don't have a real coach on the bench, you know, and you know, seeing Billy Donovan operate and how he interacts with players and how the players sort of respond, really disappointing. I mean, listen, the Bulls should have won that game in the third quarter yesterday against Oklahoma City, and basically gave up a 24-point lead, had a 9-point lead late in the fourth quarter, and gave it up. It went to overtime, and then next thing you know, they lose in overtime. But you're starting to see the little, you know, Patrick Williams starting to look a little bit more like the guy that they probably thought they had when they drafted him. Kobe White is getting in a little bit more. Zach LaVine looks like a premier scorer in the league. But it's about defense, you know, with our teams especially. It's going to be about defense and how you're able to stop people because, yeah, you need to score. But in this league, if you're giving, like the Bulls having had one game where they've given up less than 100 points, that's not going to cut it in this league right now. You have to be able to play defense.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
No, you good.
Dude, does this sound like I'm going higher than lower? Like every time I speak?
No, I don't know. Like the audio in my ears is kind of weird. It's been weird since we did the audio check, so I don't know if it's you. But Steve, can you hear it? Does the audio sound good to you?
I'm actually hold on.
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, cool. Steve
all right,
said
let me
it sound good.
All right, cool. Just making sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, and the Knicks have been banged up, and so have the Bulls. You know, to be quite honest, you know, the Bulls have had the whole COVID stuff happening to them, and then obviously the Knicks have had a lot of you know, guys in and out themselves. But you know, at the end of the day, dude, like, you know, the time for excuse making is not right now, right? Like, we have to hold these teams accountable because this isn't the Bulls with Jim Boylan. You know, this isn't the garbage roster that you once had. You know, lots and lots of really good players and solid veteran players on both of our teams right now. So there's no excuse for these types of, you know, kind of terrible runs as we've been on. I mean, you know, the Knicks haven't been terrible, but the Bulls since, I mean, we've had a couple games canceled, but the Bulls since last week have been not so good.
Yeah, nor we, but you're right. No, we haven't had Obi. We haven't had Alec Burks, who's averaging like 20 coming off the bench. I'm trying to think. There's somebody else that we haven't had for a while. We haven't had Dennis Smith Jr., but you know, the jury's out on that for another day. But and we haven't had Frank Ntilikina, who I think should have been traded from New York a long time ago. So we'll see what happens. But that still doesn't excuse the fact that these guys can't hit a goddamn shot.
Yeah.
Like, sweet mamacita. Like, nah, dude, it drives me nuts. It drives me flipping nuts. Well, guys, welcome to the Mack and Black podcast. Yeah, we just jumped dead into sports without even introducing ourselves. That's Mack over there in Chicago, representing down here in Houston. I'm Black. We got a lot to talk about today. We're actually going to jump into football here in a little bit. Also, we'll probably talk more basketball outside of our own two teams. I was just fired up, had to get that off my chest. The White Sox and Yankees made moves over the last couple of days. We'll get into that. and then I tagged Mack in a Facebook. Okay, so David is saying that we sound low, but we sound clear. So I don't know. We could turn it up just a little bit, but he said we sound clear. But
yeah,
we sound low.
I have you on 10 right now on my board here, and I can still barely hear you.
All right, for sure. But yeah, no. We're gonna get into NFL playoffs. The hockey season started. Rangers got whopped. They play again tonight. The Blackhawks, I know, have been on the struggle bus, and I know a lot of Hawks fans don't want to hear that R word, but it's gonna have to come into play at some point. Because I know they're looking their age as of late, so we'll get into that. And then, the post I posted you in the destruction of Stipe Miocic.
Oh man,
is the countdown? It's on March 27th. It's going to be Stipe versus Francis 2 for the heavyweight championship of the world. Can't wait. And then Volkanovski is fighting too.
Mm-hmm.
He's fighting. God bless, I forgot who it was, but he's on that card as well. So March 27th, you're not going to want to do anything. If you want to see absolute bloody murder, just make sure you get the pay-per-view and watch the pay-per-view. However you watch it, because I'm pretty sure everyone gets ESPN Pay-per-View Plus. And so
I need to jump in on it because first of all it's Brian Ortega who's fighting Volkanovski. But you reminded me because Dana White he has been trying to scare people online like, oh, all you illegal streamers, I got something for you this year. And all I could do is just laugh. Like, really, I just want to go, Dana, have you ever heard of a VPN? Have you ever heard of just private browsing? Because it's impossible to get rid of illegal streams, and the UFC apparently has made it their mission to get rid of illegal streams this year. Good luck. And by the way, I do want to say at 3:00 Central, the UFC and Dana White has said they have an announcement. We don't know what it is exactly. I think it's regarding Khabib because him and Khabib met yesterday while they were doing some Dana White looking for a fight in Abu Dhabi. So it looks like it's a Khabib related announcement that directly affects the Poirier-McGregor fight that's happening next week. So it should be pretty big news here, and we'll probably find out whether or not. I believe what he's gonna say is Khabib is gonna come out and fight the winner of Poirier and McGregor. So we will see about that, but we'll have some news coming for you guys probably during the broadcast.
Yeah, and Conor McGregor came out the other day and said that Khabib is scared of him. So he's once again poking at the bear, which worked out so great the first time he did it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And dude, so you're gonna go back into the fire you already just got burned in? Yeah. We're really gonna do this again? But Conor McGregor has been a guy who's not short of words. So I saw that on ESPN.com before when Steve called and he said that he had a huge announcement that he had met with Khabib. So it does sound like that maybe Khabib is it's funny because when we talk when he retired after the Gaethje fight, you in particular were like, I think he's for real, and I was like, Khabib doesn't really seem like a guy that would he didn't do a Cejudo.
Right.
Cejudo retired because he's a dumbass and wanted more money.
More tension.
Khabib retired because his dad had passed and he promised his mom that he'll do one more fight and didn't want to fight without his dad. But it's like that old saying, how you can take a guy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the guy.
Sure.
Where it's like with Khabib, you can take the fighter out of the ring, or you can take a fighter out of the ring, but you can't take the fight out of the fighter, so to speak, kind of thing. And I think that's where Khabib is at, where it's like, okay, it was emotional. My dad wasn't here. I wish he was here. I made a promise to my mom, but he's probably sitting at the crib right now in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I got to get back into the ring. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I understand, when you lose a loved one and it's very emotional and, you get out there and you're like, man, even Michael stepped away for a little bit when his dad was killed and still was able to come back. It takes time to grieve over stuff like that. Yeah. So if it is Khabib coming back to continue to cement his GOAT status, well then, hey, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But I am extremely stoked that Stipe Miocic finally took the thumb out of his ass and was like, okay, I'll go ahead and get my ass whooped by Francis, and just prolonging the inevitable at this point. Because I saw the same Instagram you saw of Francis, bro. I think Stipe should just hand the title over.
Yeah.
Just hand it over.
Scary, man.
That man looks like a monster right now.
Scary, dude. Yeah, yeah. and also, I can't help but feel like Stipe has no more excuses left as far as like why he's delaying his fights. Like the whole DC thing, he had a couple legitimate excuses when it came to, I think one of them was his eye. Another one was like he had like an ankle injury. But like this is very clearly a guy who's like, I'm just gonna hold on to this thing and just keep buying my time until I can finally, because at the end of the day, like I think Stipe is expecting that first Francis to show up, and you remember that first fight, it was ugly. Like both fighters really didn't look very good at all, and obviously Francis ended up losing that fight, but
right.
This is a very different Francis with a very different mentality, and I would expect him to come in ready to in the first 30 seconds go and take Stipe's head off.
Do you know what this kind of reminds me of a little bit? This almost kind of reminds me if like for how long people have watched the UFC, kind of take a look at the career of George St. Pierre.
Right.
When George St. Pierre started getting himself into the title picture now, with the welterweight title picture, remember he lost to Matt Hughes.
Matt Hughes, yeah.
And then 2 fights later asked for a rematch with Matt Hughes, beats Matt Hughes for the welterweight title, and then in his next defense was against David the Terra Serra.
Yeah. And
in arguably one of the greatest upsets in UFC history, David Serra beats St. Pierre, and then St. Pierre gets the rematch, and then pretty much just took off from there. I feel like Francis is kind of in that same boat where, like you said, in that first fight against Stipe, both guys looked sloppy. They didn't look great, but Francis, his takedown defense now is about 28 times better than it was in that first fight.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. We saw Alistair Overeem try to take him down, and the best thing that happened to Alistair is that he caught an uppercut to the jaw so flush that his toes curled when he was knocked out.
Yeah.
We saw there was another fight Francis had, not the Rosenstruik fight. That one was done in like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
But he knocked Rosenstruik out, and Rosenstruik is one of the most feared hitters in the UFC.
Yeah.
So Francis has been knocking people out, and then you see his workout regimen, and then he actually took a few boxing lessons from the great Mike Tyson himself. Yeah. So I think Francis is now, it's like, okay, I put that first fight around, but like you said, dude, this is not the same Francis Ngannou. No. This is almost a more dangerous Francis Ngannou than the one we saw in the Stipe fight, and like you said, the excuses is over. First it was your eye, then it was I don't want to fight anyone other than DC, and now you have no excuse. You've been off for almost what? It's been like what, 6-7 months since last time you fought. So you've been off for almost damn near a year. You should be fine.
Yeah.
Get your ass in the gym and take this L, because on March 27th, Francis is taking what's his, and that's the UFC heavyweight title.
Yeah.
And I'm accepting all bets. All bets, because I got morons on my Facebook. They're like, when Stipe beat him the first time, did you not see it? But Stipe didn't beat this Francis.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless you're not seeing the same fights I'm seeing, I was not impressed when Stipe beat DC the third time, or in part 3.
Yeah.
I really wasn't impressed, and I think DC, he didn't back down like no wuss, but he definitely got poked in the eye, and it definitely affected the fight.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of Stipe nut huggers aren't going to want to accept that, but facts are facts, and it's what it is.
Yeah.
So bring on March 27th, man. That's what I'm waiting for.
And
I can't wait.
And it brings in an even more. Yeah, and it brings an even more exciting thing because John Jones is just waiting in the wings right now, right? It's like there's really no plan for John as of right now, and I think a lot of that is looped into what happens with Stipe and Francis, because if Stipe beats Francis, then I think it's an easy fight to make, which is John Jones and Stipe. The fight that I'm not sure they'll make is if Francis wins. I'm not sure they'll give John to Francis right away, and that sort of puts John in even more of a limbo, which, makes this moving up and moving down stuff a little bit more annoying nowadays. Like with Adesanya, for example, like the fact that he's going to be fighting Jan right now, when, there's 2 or 3 contenders in each one of those divisions that could, take up some space. I thought maybe this was a little bit too soon for the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya fight, but, light heavyweight, to me, until John sort of makes his mark in heavyweight, John is always going to come back. I have a feeling John's going to come back to light heavyweight soon. I think if it means that Israel wins the light heavyweight title and then is a double champ, which won't be for long because, that's the thing about the UFC is like you're not even making it fun because you're going to strip Israel as soon as he wins the light heavyweight title. You're going to strip him of the middleweight title, and the next thing you know, he's going to be a champ for like 20 seconds, and then you're going to give, a fight for Robert Whittaker and maybe Darren Till or something like that. So it's just, right now the UFC, because they were like running through the pandemic and running through the year last year when a lot of companies were like, whoa, let's take our foot off the gas. The UFC had the opposite approach, and by the way, they've taken a couple weeks off, and they're in Abu Dhabi now. They have 3 fights, I believe, in the next 6 days or 9 days. I believe it's 3 cards in the next 6 or 9 days. So really busy stretch here coming up, and they're actually on right now. So the main card just started, I believe, or will be starting here very shortly. So early start time for that one. There was a couple of good fights, but really, the fights tonight is going to be mainly about Holloway versus Kattar. There are a couple of pretty good undercard, main card that are on that are under that. But I think really the main thing right now is, if you look at it with Holloway versus Kattar, that's a really good fight. But like, Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown, that's probably not.
Wait. Dude, Carlos is still employed by the UFC?
You got it, yeah.
Been done?
Yeah, Carlos probably needs some money, man. I imagine Carlos needs some money because Matt the Immortal Brown, he's looked like he's needed to retire for the last year, maybe plus. But they're going to be fighting. Ponzinibbio versus Lee is another good fight. Terrence Buckley versus DiCirico is a good fight. And then I think we just missed. Oh no, it's still coming on. Todorovic versus Soriano. That's going to be a good one as well. But again, is anybody, Nick? Are you jumping out of your socks right now to watch Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown?
Guys, we gotta stop the show. I gotta go watch the
show. I gotta go watch it. Yeah, sorry.
Right quick. So let's go ahead and pause stream quick. Hell no. My buddy John Codd says he thinks that Izzy's gonna keep both belts. He's not really putting on weight to move to light heavyweight.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. I think he might have misunderstood me. I'm not saying that Izzy's not going to want to stay. What I'm saying is that Dana has already said he wants to move on with the middleweight contenders, right? So like if you can't hold your belt hostage, the only reason why guys like DC and guys like Conor and some of these other double champs have had a chance is because the weight division was in limbo, and the middleweight division is not in limbo. The problem with the middleweight division is that the top 3 or 4 contenders, I believe 2 out of the 3 contenders that are top of the rank right now, Izzy has already beaten. So it's not necessarily that Izzy doesn't want to be middleweight or doesn't want to be light heavyweight or that he can't make weight. No, it's the fact that Dana and the company, if and when he wins the light heavyweight title, are going to strip him of his middleweight title so that they can move on with that division, because they already know that Izzy has moved on from middleweight. He wants John. I'm imagining right now he wants a champ opportunity, and then after that he wants to be able to fight John, move up in the ranks, maybe fight a couple of these legends that he's talked about. So it's not necessarily like making weight. It's more so that the UFC is not going to wait on Izzy just to write this nice script,
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And on top of that, think about it. If you're Izzy, if you do end up winning the light heavyweight championship, do you really want to keep the middleweight championship though?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because think about it. I think your point is very valid in where if he wins the light heavyweight and you just pretty much done run through the middleweight division, then why stay? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's like if let's say Anderson Silva, for example. Let's say if Anderson Silva in his prime moved from middleweight while he was just running through folks like a hot knife through butter, and it went up to light heavyweight, and let's say if he beat Bones Jones for the light heavyweight championship, right? If you're Anderson Silva, do you keep the middleweight title? You're like, dude, I've beaten everybody that the middleweight has thrown at me.
Yeah.
And so let me go to a different division. I think that's what John Bones Jones did to a heightened extent. I think he probably felt as if he had already run through the light heavyweight. There was nobody left. And by the time Jan had kind of, had moved up in the rankings, Bones Jones was like, well, screw it. I'm going to go to the heavyweight division. So, yeah, I'm thinking that if Izzy wins the light heavyweight, he might just stay and then vacate the middleweight championship, and then that really opens up the middleweight again, as you mentioned. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to that as well, to that fight as well. So we'll get into that. Christian Randall's in the house. He said he's looking forward to talking sports with us. Always glad that he's in the room. So yeah, we're just talking UFC right now, but we're actually let's go ahead and jump into what is the coup de grace this weekend, which is the NFL playoffs. And we'll go ahead and start with the inevitable, which was dude, I'll say this, man, because I don't want to say a lot of Bears fans, but I feel like when Bears fans jump off the Bears bandwagon because if there is incompetency in the front office or the team's just not good, is it just me? Does it seem like Bears fans always want to become Raiders fans? Like, how does it go from being a Bears fan to rooting for the now Las Vegas Raiders? Like, I never got it, but so the Bears lose 21-9 in a game in which I believe that game was actually winnable for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints, how do I put this? Okay, so I'm listening. First of all, screw you to Sirius XM Radio, who thought it was great to give me the Saints broadcast over the Bears broadcast.
Oh, no.
Because I tried listening to it on radio.com, and as soon as the game comes on, they flip the game to some other local broadcast. I'm like, no, please give me Jeff Joniak. I don't want to listen to the Saints broadcasters. They're garbage, dude. I mean, dude, there's nut hugging and then there's nut hugging. And these guys, the Saints couldn't do no wrong. And in my opinion, dude, I felt that the Saints looked like a shell of themselves.
Yeah.
Drew Brees looked like a guy that's 40 years old. He can't throw the ball down the field. Alvin Kamara kind of had himself a game, but I thought what was interesting was Khalil Mack in the pregame had said that he thought that the Bears defensively was probably playing the best defense they had played ever. That was his exact quote. My thing was, that's kind of a bold quote, but if you think about it, if Wims catches that pass, it changes the entire complexion of the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now at this point, I think what was it?
It was 7-0, so it would have been a tie game.
Right.
Yeah.
So you tie the game at that point. It's 7-7, okay? And then the Bears actually was playing such great defense that even after Wims drops the pass, they're still able to kind of get the field goal. So it's 7-3. I feel like the Bears left a lot of points on the board because of how inept they can be on offense at times. Yeah. And I was in this car fuming mad because I'm like, dude, get the ball in the end zone. The Saints defense is good, but it's not that great that you can't get your asses in the goddamn end zone.
Yeah.
And ultimately it backfired on them because the Bears – because they're so inept offensively, and you can only keep the Saints out of the end zone for so long that it was their demise. But I'll give the Bears credit, dude. They really put up a big fight. But what we thought was going to happen didn't happen. Matt Nagy still has his job. He's coming back next year. Ryan Pace still has his job. That's coming back next year. And yeah, all of a sudden it's going to be the Saints end up winning. So they'll be playing Tampa Bay on primetime tomorrow night as one GOAT faces another great quarterback as Brady takes on Breeze. Your thoughts on the game, dude? You're the Bears fan. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah.
What you saw, what you liked, what you didn't like, stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought you made a great point with that Wims play. I mean, that is a swing play that, like, you know how the new thing with the NFL is like win probability. Like, if this play happened, then you have an 87% chance of winning the game. Or if you score here, your win probability goes up by 7%. And that's one of those where, like, your win probability jumps up because you just score 7-7. You score a long touchdown with Wims there. It's 7-7. You give the ball back to Breeze and the offense, who, by the way, wasn't looking like themselves either. And then, Taysom Hill got hurt during that game and wasn't able to be himself there. But I thought it was pretty simple, Nick. The Bears were super short-handed. Like, you're missing your number one middle linebacker. You're missing your number 2 and 3 corners. You are missing one of your, best key cogs up front on the defensive line. And then on top of that, the offense, I think it's pretty clear by now that the defense lacked the creativity to make up for the offense. And, you mentioned that, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are back. The only, difference right now is that Chuck Pagano has decided to retire. And it sounded like the Bears came to him and said, we're going to fire you, but why don't you just retire? And that was a really disappointing thing because the defense was ill-prepared for most of the season, relied a lot on just like their really good talent and high-level players, and again, very top-heavy team on defense with Mack and Hicks and Roquan Smith and Eddie Jackson and Kyle Fuller. You got a lot of really good players up top there, but then the depth on that team is just brutal. I mean, the Bears were not prepared for a long playoff run. They don't have the depth either in the secondary or in the middle linebacker or outside linebacker corps to handle any injuries. So, I think everybody was mentally preparing for a loss last week and just kind of, waiting to be pleasantly surprised. But, Mitch Trubisky, unfortunately, is not a guy who's going to be able to play from behind. I mean, this is a guy who, when the defense is ready for him, it's very, very tough for him to do anything. And I think it made it increasingly obvious now that if it wasn't obvious before, right? I think you and I had talked about it, like, save for Mitch going on this fairy tale run where he beats the Saints and then maybe beats, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers and then goes into, Green Bay and wins the NFC. Like, short of a fairy tale story like that, Mitch wasn't coming back. And I think it's very obvious now Mitch is not going to come back. And Nick Foles is under contract for next year already. And I think the salary's already paid for. So I don't think you gain anything from even cutting him at this point. So the team is very comfortable right now with moving forward and saying next year is going to be our year. And I'm not sure I'm so ready for that because there's so many holes on this team that it's hard to imagine this team coming back to prominence next year, especially under Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. So, we'll see what it shakes out to be. But, with all these like Deshaun Watson rumors and all these rumors about, quarterback switching places right now, I'm not sure the Bears have the artillery to go ahead and make that trade. Like, I think you mentioned on your Facebook, but like Miami is like a perfect destination for Deshaun. They have the cap space, they have the draft picks. They can throw Tua in there and make the Texans happy about getting that back. But at the end of the day, right now, like, there's really no easy fix to this team right now. We basically have a very good defense when coached well with a subpar offense, and that's not going to do anything in this league, especially looking at the teams that we're looking at right now, Nick. The teams that are remaining, there's a very common thread through all the teams, which is like solid depth pretty much everywhere you look on the roster. They have quarterbacks that can win them games. There's no game managers left, right? Like, I know that the whole Rams thing, we can talk about that. I don't believe in the Rams, obviously. I think it's more so the Seahawks suck than the Rams are very good. So I'm not going to throw Jared Goff in this, but if you look at everybody else, when you talk about Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, and, you know, obviously in the AFC, you're looking at, you know, Mahomes. And, you know, these are very clear examples of top-level quarterbacks who are able to get it done with the team around them, and the Bears are just not close to that right now.
Yeah. We got some comments in chat. Chat's pretty hot right now.
Cool.
Christian, I'm gonna get to your baseball comments in just a little bit. I'm liking them so I can go back and read them. So I'm not ignoring your baseball comments, but we'll get to those in a sec. Because, you know, Christian's a diehard White Sox fan like you are, and he's pretty excited about what happened. He did say that he's a Bears fan for life. He said he'll never jump on the Packers bandwagon. I don't expect you to. If you're a Bears fan and you jumped on the Packers bandwagon, you were never a Bears fan to start with. Yeah. So Tedra Covington says, yeah, whoop, sucks ass, and the Bears defense is better than the Sucks defense. Dude must clearly be a Saints fan. Yeah, the Bears defense gets to the quarterback a little bit better. Their secondary is definitely better than ours, but that does not mean that we don't have the tools to get to Drew Brees, because one good hit on Drew Brees, it's a wrap. And we got a guy that's coming back that will be able to hit him. Christian gave us his picks. We'll get into that in a sec. Stan said we need a line and a quarterback. So he's saying that the Bears might need an offensive line to protect and a quarterback that can make plays. And then that's a baseball comment. And Tedra also said he was laughing at you when you said the Bears knew that they were going to lose coming into the game.
Yeah, you know, first of all, I think the offensive line has been playing actually pretty well the last 5 weeks. You know, they were really, really bad. When we were on the losing streak, they were really bad. But you have to remember, like, there were so many moving parts. We had the COVID issue. Whitehair missed a few games for COVID and all this stuff. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a team that needs, you know, maybe minimum two more linemen. You need a quarterback. You need, you know, you're going to need another wide receiver. Even if Mooney is the guy you say he is, you still need another receiver to go with him and Allen Robinson. And by the way, Allen Robinson's no guarantee to come back. That's another huge thing to take in consideration. And then, you know, when you look at on the defensive side, you need at least one more defensive lineman. You need to replace Danny Trevathan in the middle and get Roquan Smith a proper running mate in the middle. And then, you know, we talked about, remember, what did we say last week, Nick? Who's going to have to earn their keep during this game? Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack. And Khalil, I think, had 2 pressures the whole game. And I think Quinn had missed a couple of really, really rough plays where, you know, a couple were running plays, a couple were passing plays. And that looks to be like a huge fail for Ryan Pace, because he went out of his way to not sign Leonard Floyd, to get rid of Leonard Floyd and bring in Robert Quinn, who, by the way, is more of a 4-3 defensive end than he is a 3-4 outside linebacker. So, agreed. You know, when you have a guy who's used to having his, you know, fingers in the ground and his head on a swivel, and then all of a sudden now he's standing and he's losing that, you know, that factor in his game, it's really tough. So, yeah, dude, the Bears have their work cut out for them. Let's not mince words here. Like, you don't have a great draft pick, so who knows what the quarterback selection is going to look like. The free agent class is not great. You know, you're not going to be jumping to the front of the line to sign Phillip Rivers away from the Colts or Jameis Winston or some of these other free agents who are on the market this year. It's just not happening. So, you know, I think for the Bears, man, you know, you have to recalibrate your expectations that next year is going to be a big year. It's, you know, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy have their backs against the wall. I personally think Ryan Pace should have gotten the axe, and I think they should have had somebody else go at the draft this year. But now you're giving him one last chance to say, okay, you said that these are fluky reasons why you're not, you know. That's another thing that bothered me is the Bears front office just really not taking a lot of responsibility for the lack of depth on the team and just the overall top-heavy nature of the team, and they're blaming COVID, and we lost Eddie Goldman because of COVID, and this and this and that, and a lot of excuses being made. And by the way, the McCaskies came out the following Monday and were like, saying all the right. Here, tell me if this makes sense to you. I believe it was McCaskey who said, "This team is where we want it to be. We have the culture that we want. We're just not winning." How do those two things compute? Either you're a good organization with a good culture who wins, or you're not. There's no such thing as a good losing culture, is there? Like nobody who went 6-10 or 5-11 this year is like, we have a really good culture going in the locker room, and I think that's a plus. If you're not winning, there's no culture.
Right. Christian says he thinks that the Bears should have done what the Bulls did and just clean house. I think that's what a lot of Bears were looking forward to. They thought,
that doesn't make sense.
The only way Matt Nagy was really going to save his job was by going to the Super Bowl. And like you mentioned, coming up with this crazy ass scenario where you was going to need Mitch to beat the Saints on the road, and then if they won, they would have to go to Green Bay and try and beat them for a third time, and then if they won, then you would have to get the winner of the Bucks and the Rams in their game, and it just all would have been psycho nuts, at the end of the day. So yeah, but again, the Bears, I think, were in it for maybe 3 quarters, 2.5 at best.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned before, their inept on offense ultimately cost them the game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to our nation's capital, because this game came on after we went off the show. So the Bucks went into Washington and beat them 31-23. The big story in this, though, was Tyler Heineke.
Yeah.
Tyler Heineke came out, and I think he had like 308 passing yards, had a touchdown. One should not have been a touchdown. And the fact they called that a touchdown, you can kiss my ass. If the rule for catching is that you're supposed to complete the process of the catch, which is the rule. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. That's the rule. I saw Calvin Johnson make a full catch, go 2 feet on the ground, knee on the ground, flip the ball as he was coming up to celebrate, and they said that wasn't a touchdown because he didn't complete the process, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at that touchdown that went to, I think it was Terry McLaurin, where he catches the ball, but he bobbled it as he was going out of bounds, that is incomplete.
Yeah.
I don't care what's the jackass that's the retired referee, Terry, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He's a moron.
McCauley.
Dude, I love Tony Dungy to death, but this dude was hugging Tyler Heineke's nuts the entire game on Saturday night. It was driving me nuts.
Yeah.
But Tony Dungy was another one. Even Mike Tirico was kind of thinking like, wait a minute. He bobbled it at the end.
Wow.
And everyone's like, well, you can't clearly see if the ball is out of his hands. Dude, no one bobbles a football with one hand still on it. It was moving. It was incomplete based on the rule. But Tyler Heineke had himself a huge day. And the reason why I'm bringing up his name is this. Am I the only one that feels like Tyler Heineke is going to end up just being Matt Flynn?
Yeah,
dude,
we know it. We know it. It's foregone conclusion. You already know what's going to happen with Tyler Heineke.
Yeah, dude. Because, dude, I maybe everyone says, Nick, they call me a delusional fanboy, whatever. They say I'm a hater, whatever. But we're really going to throw, like, the way people were talking on their Facebooks after Tyler Heineke put up this great performance on Tampa on Saturday night, all of a sudden, this man's starter material, and we're just going to give him a 3-year, $70 million deal. And, a team like the New York Jets are looking at a Tyler Heineke. And I'm like, guys, it's one flipping game. I mean, do we really want to go into history of the NFL? Matt Flynn lit up the Detroit Lions in Week 17, got a 4-year deal to start in Seattle, lost his job to Russell Wilson. The rest is history.
Yeah.
Dude, it's one game. Tyler Heineke is nothing more than a backup. That's all he has been. Yeah. That's all he will be. Don't get fooled. Because the funny part was, Chase Young said, I wanted Tom Brady. You want to know how great Chase Young did on Saturday night? 3 hurries, never touched Tom Brady the entire game. So big ups to Donovan Smith in that game.
Yeah.
But the Bucs do come out and win. Tom Brady had himself a fair game. I think he had 2 touchdowns, 1 to Chris Godwin, 1 to Antonio Brown, who against the 4th-ranked defense was wide open. Yeah. And I want to get into that connection here in a little bit. But a good win for Tampa Bay. That's their first playoff win. So let's kind of look at the weekend before we get into the game, because there's a lot of firsts that happened in this game. The Buccaneers' first playoff win since they won the Super Bowl in 2003.
Wow.
And then if you look on the AFC side, Lamar, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. That's your picks. 1 in Baker, pick 8 in Josh Allen, and pick 31 in Lamar Jackson, yeah. All in the same year that they all came out, all got their first playoff win. And so congratulations to those 3 quarterbacks. And I really think that Ravens-Bills matchup later on this evening is going to be an absolute amazing game. But back to the Tampa game, though. I was talking to a friend. One of the friends, this guy that saw me in my Bucs gear when I was dashing last night. He was saying, he was like, man, y'all let Tyler Heineke run on you. The main problem is, if you really watch that game, if Devin White is in that game, Tyler Heineke doesn't have half the game he had. Right. Look at the game. Kevin Minter on 3 different occasions missed a tackle to where Tyler Heineke went off for 20 yards. The famous one was the second one, where he runs right into Tyler Heineke, or Heineke's going to run right into him, makes one juke to the right, Minter completely whiffs on the tackle, 30 yards down the field, it's a first down. Yeah. It's like, and that play was like a 3rd and 13, and they were able to get a first down on that. And it drives me nuts. So I think Devin White coming back will be big in the game against the Saints. But, looking at the game, I thought what made me the happiest in the game was Tom Brady picking apart a playoff defense that was top 5. The Washington football team, if I'm not mistaken, going into this game was the 4th best defense in the league. And Tom Brady didn't get sacked until Alex Kappa fractured his ankle, and then that pressure came up the middle. So that's going to be a big one too. But overall, I think offensively the Bucs look decent. And that combination between Tom Brady and Antonio Brown, Antonio Brown's now caught a touchdown pass, at least one of them in the last 4, if not 5 games. So that chemistry between those two is really starting to get good. So I thought it was a good game offensively. I think defensively, the Bucs need to tighten some things up. Their secondary has got to get on the same page. We can't have that same performance against the Saints, or we're going to get blown out. But I thought offensively this team looked good on Saturday night.
Yeah, and a couple things. First of all, regarding Heineke, we've talked about this before, Nick, that the quarterback position is, A, so hard to do, and B, so rare to find a special talent in, right? Like there's maybe 5 to 7 special talents at quarterback in the league. I'm not even including guys like Drew Brees. Like Drew Brees is a GOAT and one of the GOATs, and but I'm not even putting him in. I'm talking about guys like, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and these guys who, have the special quality that's needed to play quarterback. And because it's so rare to find that, like remember Gardner Minshew and, the Gardner Minshew mania, and it's crazy because the guy who you didn't know could play quarterback comes in and he plays a half decent game, and you go, oh my God, this guy might be for real. And really all you're saying is that it's so rare to find a quarterback who is good that when somebody is not shitty, you're like, oh my God, I've never heard of this guy before. He might be the next best thing. And it's like, No, that's not how this works, right? Like the Heineke thing is interesting because he's their fifth string quarterback. If we're counting it in reality, right? It's like
Seriously,
Haskins, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen. They had another guy in there, and Heineke was studying for exams 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't even think he was in the practice squad or anything like that. So again, it's. The fact of the matter is you've got a really tough position, and when somebody comes in and shows a small sample size, all of a sudden people go, oh my God, maybe our team should sign this guy. And I saw a couple Bears fans who were like, oh, maybe Tyler Heineke could play and we'd be better than Trubisky. And it's like, we're just grasping at straws at this point that like things are so bad, our situation's so dire that we're like, why don't we try Taylor Heineke? Like I just don't, I don't see it. And I think you meant the game was pretty cut and dry. I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of stink about how the game was close and the Buccaneers should have put it away and had a foot on their necks and weren't able to really like put the game away until late in the fourth. But I really was impressed with the Bucs. I thought, from what we saw from that front four of Washington previously, what the Bucs did was pretty amazing. Kept Tom relatively upright. Leonard Fournette had a tremendous game. And I thought Keyshawn Vaughn was good with pass cover or pass blocking. So there's a lot of things to take out of this, but. Obviously, goes without saying that the challenge this week is a little bit higher level.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but and we'll definitely get into that. Real quick, I also want to go on to the AFC side of the Sunday games because we saw Cleveland.
Yeah.
Won their first playoff game in forever. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They beat them pretty handily. Pittsburgh tried to come back at the end, but the deficit was just too great. We mentioned this last week that, I felt that Pittsburgh's defense was missing a lot of holes. When you lose Devin Bush earlier in the year and then you lose Bud Dupree at the end of the year, I felt like this game was over with in the first.
Yeah.
Not so much when they were up 28-0, so much the fact on the first play from scrimmage for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's a touchdown, a defensive touchdown for Cleveland, and they kind of just kept their foots on the throat of the Steelers. And yeah, again, the Steelers made it interesting towards the end. They were close, like the closest they got was 11, but it was just too much. And the problem is, I was thinking, Pittsburgh. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, it's so easy to go after Mike Tomlin. People are thinking that Mike Tomlin might have worn out his welcome in Pittsburgh. He's been in there too long, blah, blah, blah. When is he going to get fired? The same thing that I always say about Aaron Rodgers, the point came up with Mike Tomlin. We always talk about the greatness of Mike Tomlin and how great he is as a coach and everything. Mike Tomlin has been coach for this team for double-digit years, but I think Pittsburgh has only won 3 playoff games since the last time that they won the Super Bowl when they beat Arizona. They've only won 3 playoffs. No, not when they beat Arizona. It was when they lost to Green Bay in the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Since then, they have only won 3 playoff games. It is the same argument that I come up with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers isn't a great quarterback, but to want to consider yourself a GOAT, shouldn't you have more than one championship per se? Like having a ring is a great accomplishment. To take that next step, you got to at least sniff the Super Bowl afterwards because think about it. Aaron Rodgers hasn't even sniffed the Super Bowl since he won the same aforementioned Super Bowl that Pittsburgh just lost.
Yeah.
So, that's my thing with Tomlin. But think about it. Pittsburgh, I think, is a victim of their own demise because, well, you let Le'Veon Bell go because he wanted more money, God flipping forbid. And I thought Le'Veon Bell brought up a great point when he was in the contract dispute. You can take fantasy for a grain of salt for all you want to. But where was he wrong when he said when you talk about the 2 best running backs in fantasy, it's always him and somebody else. It was always him and Adrian Peterson or him and God knows who else, right? Le'Veon Bell was always in that conversation. When Big Ben was doing his thing, who was his two big guys? Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. You let one go because you couldn't control him. You let another one go because he wanted more money. Now you can't run the ball. Yeah. And Big Ben's arm is so shot that he threw, 4 interceptions and fumbled the football? So... And the Pittsburgh Steelers right now find themselves in kind of a hole because do they move on for Big Ben? Look at it like this, dude. Big Ben is due $40+ million next year. It's his last year. But I heard on a show, and this was from USA Today, where the Steelers only have till March, I think it's like March 17th, to make a decision to keep Big Ben. If Big Ben is still on the roster by March 17th, Big Ben is automatically due $15 million. And then he's still owed $40 if he plays.
Oh, my God.
That's almost a $55 million commitment to a guy whose arm is about ready to fall off.
Yeah.
As much as he may not want to admit it, we all know it's happening.
Yeah.
So, and people are like, well, the Steelers need to move on. And people are like, to who? But like you mentioned, Sam Darnold's still out there. Do you make a play for Deshaun Watson? Do you have the assets to make a play for him? Jameis Winston's coming off the books. He'll be a free agent if he doesn't want to stay in New Orleans. Marcus Mariota, I think, is a free agent coming out of Las Vegas. You could take a page out on him. You can make some kind of trade. Like, think about it. Think about it like this. If Miami is, and we'll talk about this later because I still think this is psycho flipping nuts. But if Miami moves from Tua after 8 games,
yeah.
If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, do you make a phone call and say, hey, look, man, we need a quarterback. We'll groom Tua as much as we need to. So the Steelers have a lot of questions they need to ask, but let's not take away from the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield and the play that they did. No head coach. Your special teams coach is playing active head coach.
Yeah.
And the Cleveland Browns went out there and played as if nobody was sick, as if Kevin Stefanski was there calling plays. Mm-hmm. And how great of a play calling was Alex Van Pelt doing?
Yeah.
I would be shocked that if Alex Van Pelt, we just talked about Tyler Heineke in his one game. What if Alex Van Pelt gets a couple phone calls saying, look, we need a head coach too?
Yeah, or we need an offensive coordinator at worst. Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Because think about it. Big Ben was 23-1 in his career against Cleveland at home. Mm-hmm. It's now 23-3-1, and that 3 could not have come at a worse time. Yeah. So I think just big ups, I don't mean I'm kind of all over the place because I'm excited, but I saw a picture of the 4 AFC quarterbacks that are left in the playoffs. You got Mahomes, who's won a Super Bowl, mm-hmm. But as I mentioned earlier, 3 quarterbacks were all drafted in the same first round, and they all get their first playoffs win. So in the AFC, you kind of got the passing of the torch, where in the NFC, you have a 6-time Super Bowl champ, 2 one-time Super Bowl champs, and a quarterback that's been in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's like all the prestige is in the NFC, or all the legendary status is in the NFC, but the up-and-comers are in the AFC. So I think this weekend's going to be great. But, again, big ups to the Cleveland Browns and their win.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were talking about, like, the Pittsburgh Steelers just shat this one away and, don't give any credit to Cleveland. That's silly because first things first, Cleveland's defense played a heck of a game, missing their best corner and, having some injuries as they have. And going back to Big Ben, man, the mobility or lack thereof for Big Ben is such a huge issue because remember, one of the reasons why Le'Veon Bell left was because his offensive linemen kept getting extensions and bigger contracts. And, we're talking about guys that, maybe did or didn't, like Alejandro Villanueva, Pouncey, DeCastro. Yeah. They had Marcus Gilbert there for a little while, and he was one of the guys that they paid before he left to Arizona. So that's another huge thing to mention is that, the Steelers were trying to make it seem like we could bring anybody off the street here to run behind this offensive line. And I tell you what, man, that's not true. Benny Snell, Not going to do it. I'm sorry. James Conner's got a tremendous story, and, you applaud him for everything he's done in his life, but that's not a starting running back, Nick. I'm sorry. That is not a starting caliber running back. To think that Cleveland has what could be two of the top 5, maybe if you're being gross about it, 2 of the top 10 running backs in the league on their roster, in Chubb and Hunt, and all the ways they use them too. It's fascinating because if you think about it, Nick, Cleveland only has one receiver. You've got Landry, and then after that, it's just like Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones. There's not a lot of depth there. They've got 2 really good tight ends. Some would say 3 really good tight ends, 2 really good running backs. They have the best, some would say the best offensive guard in the league in Wyatt Teller. One of the best picks in Kyrie Willis out of Alabama a couple years ago. He's been a tremendous left tackle for them. Kyrie, I always forget.
Willis Jr.
There you go. And also, when you look at him, that dude looks like an offensive lineman. He is ginormous and strong, and you put him in front of Stephon Tuitt or one of these guys, that's Cameron Hayward. These guys are, oh my God, these guys are world beaters. And Wyatt Teller and the whole Cleveland offensive line made him look bad because Baker was clean, and that's another thing that you really have to take into consideration here. Baker's taken the steps that you've asked him to take. That's another huge thing is I remember hearing guys that really know what they're talking about, probably know more than I know when it comes to football. And a couple years ago, they were talking about how Baker's a flop. He was a flash in the pan. He got lucky that Cleveland fell in love with him, and that's why he went number 1 overall. And let's be honest, Baker was not tremendous in some spots over the last couple of years. But man, has that guy taken a step forward this year, even through some of the mistakes, through some of the tough times that they've had, continue to run the ball. And he's, say what you want about Baker. People love playing with that dude. They look like they are having fun playing with that guy. And, I'm sorry, but when Tom Brady scores a touchdown and that team erupts and they start celebrating and, Tom is in his guys' faces and screaming and pumped up, it's not the same feel as when the Bears, get in the end zone, or when, it's very clear that the quarterback is such an essential position, not only on the field, but also just to have a team. It seems like, when you're looking at Kansas City, they know they're shorthanded in some ways, but when they see Jesus and his curly hair, come out of the locker room, they go, you know what? We've got a shot. No matter what happens, we've got a shot here. Even if I shit the bed, he shits the bed, we're all going to be good because Jesus is right there and he's warming up and he'll be just fine. So the confidence that you get when you have a quarter, and I think Josh Allen's in the same boat. We'll talk about that. I think he's in the same boat too, because when you look at what the guy has done, first of all, the football looks like a pill in his hand because he is so... He knows what he's doing. He does everything with conviction. When he's running, he's running. He's not halfway sliding. He's not I'm gonna get the first down and go. No, he's running the ball. When he's going for a deep ball, you've never seen this guy undershoot a receiver for a deep ball. Never, because the guy is always ready. The ball is always sort of ready to be released, and that's what I saw out of Baker on Saturday, or it was Sunday actually. And to me, all you really need to see after that is now this week you need to see him kind of come out and win them the game, right? That's going to be a huge portion of this, is that you're probably not going to be able to rely on Chubb and Hunt to do it alone. Can he win the game by himself? We don't know that. We'll see, right? We'll see what the sample size looks like. But man, again, congrats to Cleveland. I think Pittsburgh has a lot of thinking to do here. I don't think Mike Tomlin's job is not safe, but when you talk about Ben and that salary number, and then you talk about what he's been able to bring you, is it really worth? You look at Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph is not good, but it seems like Mason Rudolph might have given them just as good of a chance on Sunday that Ben did.
I'm with you on that. And also let's also throw in there Marquise Pouncey's contract is up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they can part ways with him. I think he's due $15 million if he is still in the Pittsburgh uniform.
And Villanueva too. Alejandro Villanueva, their big tackle. He's going to be gone after this year, I think. And
exactly.
They've got a lot of roster moves that they're going to have to make, including like Eric Ebron. That didn't quite work out for them there. Obviously Juju. Juju's a huge one. People forget, I believe Juju is unrestricted after this year. So, they have to figure a way to sign him. But if you're Pittsburgh, I've got Deontay Johnson. I've got Chase Claypool. I've got James Washington. Do I really go and break the bank for Juju, especially after what he did this year? I mean, I know you and I are not, we're not going to be the guys that sit here and harp on the TikTok stuff. We're not going to sit here and go, TikTok ruined the Steelers, right? I don't think we're those types of idiots. But when you look at what the stuff that he did and the type of bulletin board material he gave Cleveland in 2 separate games, it's silly to think that this guy should be considered an automatic, let's re-sign this guy. I really don't see that. I think Pittsburgh has to think long and hard before they sign that guy.
And even in L's, they're still doing it.
Chase Claypool
came
out
and said they'll be on the couch with us next week. Dude, are you really trying to put that on the Kansas City Chiefs right now?
Yeah, seriously.
Because, we'll get into the games here in a sec, but, you look at these matchups. All 4 of these matchups are great. Oh, before we do that, Let's get into the real quick, the Ravens and the Titans.
Yeah,
they played Sunday afternoon. I'm so happy for Lamar Jackson. I thought all the criticisms around Lamar, some are legit, where I think the one thing that kills Lamar Jackson the most is the fact that he struggles throwing the ball consistently.
Right.
But you can never question Lamar Jackson's legs.
Oh, my God.
That 50-something yard touchdown run might be one of the best touchdown runs I've ever seen by a quarterback in my life.
Yeah.
And we've seen some of the best running quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen, Michael Vick, obviously. Steve Young, obviously. We've seen guys like, Donovan McNabb was scrambling for a little bit. Vince Young was was notably a better scrambling quarterback in Texas than he really was in the NFL. But when he was a rookie in Tennessee, when he came out, I remember he had a few really nice rushing touchdowns. But that rushing touchdown that Lamar Jackson did was absolutely insane. If you go back and you watch it, the pocket collapses, nobody's open. He sees 10 yards, he's gone. But when he broke that tackle from the middle, from that middle linebacker, and I can't think of who it was, it was like he just put it in 5th gear. It was gone. Not a soul was going to touch him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this kid is so special. And that's why I think with me, one of the reasons why I like Lamar is because Lamar didn't do a Donovan McNabb, where Donovan McNabb was a dual threat quarterback, but then stopped running because he felt like he wasn't getting respect as a passing quarterback. So then he tried to become this pocket passer, and he was such ass in Philly afterwards that they just outright let him go. Yeah. He goes to Washington. He's ass there. Then he tried and played in Minnesota for a little bit, and then he just retired from the game.
Yeah.
Where Lamar Jackson, think about it. Since he had gotten drafted, they even asked him in the draft boards. They were like, are you going to change positions? He said, no, I'm a quarterback. The Ravens take a chance on him, even though you still are under contract with Flacco. They take a chance on him. Flacco gets hurt. He comes out, and all he's done so far was won an MVP last year as one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the game, and wins his first playoff game this year. So I want to give Lamar Jackson all the credit in the world because he hasn't listened to any haters.
Right.
If he would have, he'd be a running back. Instead, he stayed where he was at. He knows he can run the ball. He knows he can make the passes here and there. But if he can get that pass game down on a consistent basis, the whole Lamar versus Patrick Mahomes over the next 8 or 9 years are going to be amazing battles if they haven't been already. Yeah. But I thought the Ravens defense needs to get a whole lot of credit because they did exactly what they were supposed to do. You cut off the head of the snake and watch the rest of the body die. the head of the snake was Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And Derrick Henry only had like 40-some yards of rushing.
Yeah.
So you put the game in Ryan Tannehill's hands. Ryan Tannehill can't get it done. And lo and behold, after he throws that interception, and F you to the NFL for finding him for this, did a TO on the Titans logo, and they got fined for it earlier, but I'm pretty sure Baltimore will be more than happy to pay for that fine.
Yeah.
And they're now going to go on and take on the Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So big win for Baltimore this past weekend.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Lamar and his progression too, because as we're talking about quarterbacks here and quarterbacks who've taken the next step, he's a guy who's taken the next step. Like I don't necessarily think he is like at his full capacity right now as a passer. And also a special shout out to Lamar's mom, who was his agent and one of the main sort of, I guess, figures after he left Louisville, and everybody at the combine was telling him, sweetie, your son is not a quarterback. Maybe tell him to go, switch positions. He could be a first-round pick just on his, talent alone and da-da-da. And she said no. She said he's a quarterback. He's going to be a quarterback. And he stuck with it just like she had kind of, put him up to. And what I would also say about Lamar is that the Harbaugh does a tremendous job of making him look good. And that's something that I think, like, Matt Nagy was really bad at with, like, let's say Mitch Trubisky. Like, Matt Nagy could have made Mitch Trubisky look really good if he wanted to. He could have ran a lot of simple plays that would have made Mitch Trubisky look good. Maybe the team would have not been as explosive. Maybe the team would not have been as efficient as they'd like. But they could have really done some things to make Mitch look good. And boy, does Harbaugh make Lamar look good, because he knows that, we've talked about it earlier on this show, they are a play from ahead type of team. They're not going to be a team that's going to be able to go down 14 in the first quarter and come back right away, because they rely on the running game. I mean, the running game is most of what they do. So to me, I think Lamar took that next step to say, you know what, I'm going to get this monkey off my back and get this first win. The Titans, let's be honest, they have a regular season blueprint, right? Derrick Henry and what the style of football they play on offense is very conducive to regular season wins. But we've seen it. Their defense is not nearly as good enough to beat a team like Baltimore. I think they would have been absolutely whomped by Buffalo or Kansas City or even Cleveland for that matter. So I really do truly think in the AFC the best teams are remaining, and I think in the NFC, like for example, like the Rams, I think they got really lucky catching the Seahawks when they did. And we talked about it while I was live on air, because we just kept thinking, this looks like a trap game. This feels like a game where the Seahawks are sort of, just right there, but then they fall short. And you mentioned on your Facebook, like, how do you lose to Jared Goff? Jared Goff with 1.5 hands, beats you, and yet, it seems like the Seahawks just want to scapegoat offensive coordinators. What happened? It was Darrell Bevell. Darrell Bevell was their offensive coordinator for so long, and then I believe it was after they didn't hand it off to Marshawn and lost to the Patriots, they fired Darrell Bevell instead of just going, you know what, we fucked up and we need to adjust our game plan. They fired Darrell Bevell, and I believe this week they fired their offensive coordinator again, so we'll see how that works out for them. But that Buffalo-Baltimore matchup, that's going to be a good matchup, and that's one you're going to see which quarterback has taken the next step, because Josh Allen, this kid is special, man. This kid is special, and what he's able to do with the ball, and to think, Nick, that some people missed on that guy. Like, to think that Buffalo was – you remember the type of shit they got when they selected him, and people were saying, oh, my God, this kid came from a school that played nobody, and you know what? They basically just are drafting him because of his size and his strength. And then, like, you see what this guy can do on a week-in, week-out basis, and the type of, like, incremental improvements he can make every single week, to the point where now, I mean, this guy might be a top 5 passer in this league with the way that I talked about it. The ball looks small in his hands because he can fling the ball at almost any angle. Very Patrick Mahomes-like in the fact that like he can get out of the pocket and still throw the ball from an uncomfortable angle and get the ball to his receivers. And let's be honest, it's not like Buffalo has a ton of weapons for him, right? It's like Stephon Diggs, and then after that, you're like looking at Cole Beasley and John Brown and Gabriel Davis and maybe some tight ends, and their running backs aren't even that great. Yeah, and their running backs are like, Devin Singletary, and Zach Moss is injured now, but Devin Singletary is not a guy that you're scared of. So I imagine Baltimore is going to be making Devin Singletary beat them this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I was listening to, usually when I dash on Sundays, I listen to a lot of Fox Sports. I dash into like the wee morning. And one of my favorite shows is actually on Fox Sports. It's like Chris Panic and RJ. I can't think of the other guy's name. Mm-hmm. I love listening to him. I love listening to the Anik, I think his name is, because he sounds a lot like I do. And what I'm referring to is, for me, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for me to jump on the same bandwagon as everybody else. Hence why I love the Knicks, Rangers, Yankees, and Bucks, and no team from Chicago. But he had made mention about Russell Wilson. And I have been in countless arguments all year about how I feel about Russell Wilson. I've said many times that I felt that Tom Brady was more of an MVP than Russell Wilson was. I feel Russell Wilson at times is very overrated. But every time I said something, everyone had this stupid ass excuse on why Russell Wilson gets these free passes. Yeah. So you explain to me, what free pass should I give Russell Wilson this past weekend? What free pass should I give Russell Wilson from Saturday afternoon that I can't just drop the big O-bomb? That's all I want to know. Because Russell Wilson did not look that great on Sunday. Now, albeit he went against the number one defense in the league in the Los Angeles Rams, but here comes the excuses. Well, they didn't have the 12th man. Dude, piss off, dude. You've been playing without a 12th man for 16 weeks. Yeah. So all of a sudden, the playoffs, that's going to be the inevitable what stopped Russell Wilson for throwing that dumbass pick six to Marcus Peters.
Oh, that was ugly.
Or whoever it was, it wasn't Marcus Peters, but whoever it was. Yeah, real smart. That's the 12th man's fault, right? You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying Russell sucks, but I'm just saying, he won that Super Bowl against Denver many years ago. I mean, he went back one more time after that. But what am I supposed to see where I'm just like, oh, man, this man's so special. Yeah. Like, this man is so great. Like, this man's this and that. Okay, yeah, you had the same come-from-behind comeback win against Atlanta as Tampa Bay did, as the Bears did, as Dallas did, as some of many of the NFL has done. Detroit had one. You get what I'm saying? So am I supposed to be special? So, everyone's throwing this bouquet of flowers at the feet of Russell Wilson. Dude, I'm not that guy. Like, no. I mean, he's good, but he's not, oh my God, I wish I had a Russell Wilson. I'm straight.
And it's about time people start putting some respect on the Legion of Boom now, because when the Legion of Boom went away, Russ maintained his sort of like, his stat level. He could still throw the ball and do whatever you need to. But without that defense, they are really, really rough to watch. Like, to see the Rams with a quarterback with one hand, their third string running back, they were missing lots of offense.
Killed them, by the way.
Killed them. Absolutely killed them.
Killed them yet.
And then you have an offensive line that was incomplete, banged up. Andrew Whitworth has had injury issues all year. Cooper Kupp is having injury issues. Robert Woods is having injury issues. I mean, and then we talked about how good that Rams defense is, but at the end of the day, that was a very winnable game for Seattle, and it's about time we stop making excuses for Seattle. And also, Nick, Pete Carroll. Like, when is it that Pete Carroll starts to receive some of the flack for some of these losses? Because again, we talked about it, like they're gonna fire the offensive coordinator and then just make it seem like, oh, it's a play calling issue. And to me, it wasn't a play calling issue. It was much more than that. It was also like, when you look at it, the team didn't really have an identity on offense. Usually you're used to seeing a team that was going to run the ball 20 times a game, no matter what. Even if it was, Russell's grandpa in the backfield, they were going to run the ball 20 times a game, no matter what. And with Chris Carson and the injury issues that he has, lack of depth behind him, DK Metcalf, when a guy is screaming on the sidelines like that, in the first quarter of a game, in his first ever playoff game, I believe, right? I think it's his first ever playoff game. No, they won one it was last year they had one. He won that one against the Eagles with that long touchdown. But I'm just saying, this guy to me is still not a guy that should be screaming on the sidelines if you're having a bad first quarter, and it makes you look bad. Pete Carroll just kind of like ha-ha-haing it to death, and it's like, nah, dude, because I'm telling you, if you were in New York with that shit, if you were in Chicago with that shit, if you were in LA with that shit, oh man, the media. But the problem is, you got some Northwest niceness out of these Washington reporters, and the great Northwest just loves to be nice, and it's like they let him off on this every year. But you're right, like, what has he done? I mean, we still don't give him enough flack about not running the ball with Marshawn. You lost the Super Bowl because you didn't run the ball, and then now since then, what has this team done, and what has Russell done? And quite frankly, next year, I'm not saying you're looking for Russell's replacement per se, but you draft a guy, right? Like, you have to find a guy who can sit behind him and be the injury blanket until this happens, because who knows, another year and a half, 2 years of this bullshit, they might not want Russell much longer.
Yeah, you're right. And also, let's also give some flack for the front office of the Seattle Seahawks, because, correct me if I'm wrong, they drafted Rashad Penny out of San Diego State.
Yep.
Over Nick Chubb.
Yeah, that's true. And he hasn't even played.
I don't even need to explain any more than what I just said. That Rashad Penny, Mr. 2000 in San Diego State, was drafted over Nick Chubb, who is SEC tested.
And there's more ugly. I'm not going to look it up, but there's more ugly ones. They selected that defensive end out of TCU last year, and I believe they gave up. I think there was three Pro Bowlers who were drafted after that. So they haven't done a tremendous job of drafting either.
No, and again, Pete Carroll has to have his hand on that, because the coach has to converge with the GM on who they're going to want to draft, because obviously it's the coach that has to coach the players. So somewhere Pete Carroll's like, yeah, you know what, that Rashad Penny, man, that's going to be the guy. Ugh. Dude's been a total bust since he's been in the NFL.
Can't even stay on the field, yeah.
Can't even stay on the field, exactly. Meanwhile, Nick Chubb's just tearing it up in Cleveland. So I'll let everybody chew on that for a little bit. So that was last week. So that gets us into this week. Mm-hmm. So we get into today's games, and the game that's actually about to be starting here pretty soon is Green Bay is hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Hold on a second. I don't have.
Yeah, I got it. I got it for you. So
you got it. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and let's start us off here, and I'll get you the spread.
So here's the crazy thing. Here's the crazy thing about this game, because it's so easy to say that Green Bay is going to take this one. But there's a lot of things that's going against Green Bay in this game. Mm. I learned this yesterday, and shout out to my homies Darnell Salinas, who's a big time Rams fan, and my boy, my homie Alex Alcazaz, he's a big Dallas fan. Did you know that Aaron Rodgers in his career is 0-4 against the number one defense in the playoffs?
Really?
And the most notable loss they had was last year. The San Francisco 49ers had the number one defense last year, and they smoked Green Bay in Santa Clara last year.
Wow.
The Los Angeles Rams come into this game as the number one defense in the game. And when I was in here, I was, doing my notes and stuff, and I was thinking, I couldn't think any better than going back to that game. I think it's the last game Green Bay lost, which was at home against Minnesota. Minnesota, in my opinion, was one of the perfect game plans against Green Bay. They ran the ball tirelessly with Dalvin Cook against Green Bay, and their defense made enough plays to where Aaron Rodgers didn't go off, and they were constantly getting pressure in his face. The Los Angeles Rams have the defense and the running back to do both. The one thing that has killed Green Bay, like everyone's always coming up talking about, like I saw a stat the other day where Zadarius Smith's numbers and Aaron Donald's numbers over the last handful of years are actually similar. But the problem with that is that's just based on rushing the passer. Let's talk about how good they are in run deficiency. How is Green Bay against the run? They're not that great. Now, I know they brought in Snacks Harrison, and Snacks Harrison has actually been decent for Green Bay since they came back. But that doesn't still not marinate in the back of my head where I'm thinking like, I don't know, man, because if Cam Akers starts going off to take pressure off of Jared Goff, it could really set up failure for Green Bay. Because when I look at the Green Bay offense against the defense of LA, we know that Jalen Ramsey is pretty much on Devontae Adams. So their best wide receivers going against their best defensive back. So my question is, can Green Bay establish the run with Aaron Jones? Can Aaron Rodgers be able to get Marcus Valdez-Scantling and some of these other guys of their wide receivers in case Devontae Adams can't get open? And a piece of me says, no, I don't think it's going to happen. I really think the Los Angeles Rams have a really solid chance of going into Green Bay and beating the Green Bay Packers in this one. It was like me last week. What I say about the Bears Saints. My head says the Saints, but my heart says Chicago. I'm kind of on this boat where my head is thinking, okay, it's Green Bay, it's at home, they're the fresh of the team, but sometimes that bye isn't as great and as beneficial as people might think it is. Especially when you have a Rams team who's coming with all the momentum, beating Seattle on the road, where a lot of people didn't think that they would be able to beat Seattle on the road, where you had Cam Akers that went for I think like 143 in that game. It doesn't look good for Green Bay. So I'm going to go with the upset on this one. I'm going to take the Rams to beat Green Bay later on this afternoon. And I think that defense is going to be really good. And if Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd, who's now all of a sudden got a resurrection on how to rush the passer, can get in Aaron Rodgers' face, it's going to be a very long day for Green Bay. So I'm going to take LA on the upset to beat Green Bay. And I think Christian also picked Green Bay to beat he picked LA to beat Green Bay.
He had another upset in there too. I saw that. And by the way, it's -7 for the Packers. So 7-point favorite are the Packers. I'm not as optimistic about the Rams as you guys are, to be quite honest. I think if they would have played that game last week against the Packers, they would have got mopped up. In regards to the Rams. Now, I think you guys are bringing up some valid points, which is Aaron Rodgers, first of all, he needs the first 2 or 3 drives to go really well. That's like one thing that's very kind of common thread in all of the really good games that he has is first, second, and third drives are very productive for them. And if you can 3 and out the Packers, let's say 2 out of the first 3 possessions they have, you can keep the ball away from them if you want. And that's something that you mentioned with Minnesota, which is they just kept the ball away from the Packers. It wasn't really rocket science, right? So it was like, all right, well, every single time we get the ball, we'll shave as much time off the clock as possible, try and stay in bounds, continue to eat clock and keep the ball. But One thing I will say is that the offensive line of the Packers really worries me. That's another huge thing is, being able – I know they just lost their left tackle, and then they signed Jared Valdir to replace him, and then Valdir actually I think either tested positive for COVID or didn't pass COVID protocol, so I'm not sure if he's ready for this game or not. But the Packers right now and by the way, the injury report for both teams is pretty big. Cooper Kupp is not going to be playing today. That is a ginormous loss for the Rams, because when you talk about it, he's a safety blanket, and he's the real huge slot guy that can get you yardage, which, by the way, versus the Packers, you're going to have to do it in the slot, because Jair Alexander is one of the best corners that nobody's ever heard of in the league. This dude is a gamer, and he's a guy who will shadow your best guy as well, which I'm not sure if we'll see that with Jalen Ramsey and Devonta. I think Jalen Ramsey, similar to like the old Richard Sherman stuff, stays on one side of the field, but man, oh man, it's going to be a good matchup, but I just have a hard time picking the Rams in this one, because Goff is going to be missing his biggest target or best target, and then on top of that, right now, the Rams need to prove to us that they can run the ball consistently, because that Seattle game, I mean, you and I both know how porous that Seattle defense is. It's not good.
Yeah.
And, when you look at what they did last week, it's very hard for me to say, okay, they can do this against the Packers too. Not saying the Packers are world beaters themselves on defense, because they've got a lot of holes, but I think the Packers will not only, by the way, against the spread, I think the Packers are something like, since Aaron Rodgers has started, something like 21-3-1 or something like that against the spread. So Aaron Rodgers typically does pretty well when he's favored. We will obviously see what that looks like, but I like the Packers in this one. It's hard for me to say it. I would like to say that the Rams have a chance, but it's hard for me to work up the courage to say that Jared Goff with one hand and no Cooper Kupp, and even as good as that defense is, but I'll definitely be rooting against the Packers, but I think the Packers take this one.
Most definitely. And then later on tonight, we got two of the young quarterbacks in the game. I mentioned it earlier, Josh Allen. And, you said something earlier that I thought was very noteworthy when it came to Buffalo and Josh Allen. I remember listening to New York radio when there were actually Bills fans that were kind of upset with Buffalo for taking Josh Allen over Josh Rosen. Because a lot of people thought that Josh Rosen was the better quarterback of Josh Allen. And I bet you a lot of those Bills fans right now are kind of eating crow because Josh Rosen's been on 4 teams in the last 3 years, and Josh Allen is one of the better quarterbacks coming up in the game. He's going against Lamar Jackson, who was the 31st overall pick in that same draft by the Baltimore Ravens. Both guys getting their first win last week. All right, here's the thing. I like Buffalo. I like what Buffalo has done all year. I just don't. There's two things against that has me against Buffalo, and why I might end up taking the Ravens in this game. A, as good as Josh Allen is, he still makes rookie errors.
Yeah.
That fumble last week almost killed him.
It did, yeah.
You're supposed to just be running out the clock. Okay, you're finna take a sack, but now you're trying to do too much. You fumbled the ball. Now you gave the Colts new life. Ugh. Like, it almost ended up being a terrible mistake. Also, I'm not saying that all right, I'm not taking anything away from the offense of the Indianapolis Colts. It's okay. I think they were in the game way too much. I thought some of the plays they made were way too easy, and I thought that they were able to go down the field at will at a few times in that game. That's why I think I'm going to take the Ravens in this one. Mark Ingram is a healthy scratch because, and I knew this was coming when they signed Mark Ingram. I know Mark Ingram had a decent game or had a decent year last year, but this offense doesn't suit what Mark Ingram is. No. He's not a option like running back. This is a guy you put behind the fullback, you put behind the line, and just let him run. He's not a let me option it. Maybe I see a hole. Or let me, he's not that kind of running back.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins is, Gus Edwards is, and Lamar Jackson with his running ability is a quarterback that can run that kind of offense. I think they have a huge game on the ground because Buffalo has had issues stopping the run. And I think sometimes with certain quarterbacks, when you get that first win, it just does something to your soul, and now you want another one, and now you want another one. And I think that Lamar Jackson still kind of has the perennial monkey on his back, and he's ready to get it off. He already did it by beating Tennessee last week to get the first win. Now let's see you do it again. Let's see you go out there on the road again and now be a Buffalo team that's on the up and come up. So I like Lamar Jackson. I like the Ravens on this. I think their defense is going to give Josh Allen fits. And I really think that and I'm pretty sure it'll be Marcus Peters. If Marcus Peters is on Stephon Diggs and shuts him down, it's going to be a long day because we know that that's his favorite receiver. And like you said, once you get past Stephon Diggs, it's John Brown who's been in and out. It's Cole Beasley. That's okay. You have Dawson Knox, but they don't really throw the tight ends that much. Yeah. So if you take Stephon Diggs out, it'll be easier for Baltimore to win. I think they do it. I like Baltimore in this game.
Yeah, I think you hit on all the points I wanted to hit on. And also, remember last year when you and I were so high on Buffalo? And one of the reasons why we were so high on Buffalo is because that defense was a bitch, and they could stop anybody. And this year, you don't see that. And I'm glad you mentioned the stuff against the Colts because all I could think of watching that game was, man, Buffalo should be winning by 30, by 40, because Indianapolis is just, taking easy plays. You're missing one tackle here, and next thing you know, boom, Zach Pascal. I mean, we were on the air during most of the game, and boom, Buffalo scores, and you're thinking, wow, Buffalo's really going to run away with this. And then, not more than 2 game minutes later, Indianapolis scores, and we're back to square one. So if you do that against Baltimore, you're going to lose. And another thing to take into consideration with Baltimore is that offensively, they do what the kryptonite to Buffalo is, which is similar to when we saw Kansas City play Buffalo earlier this year, and Kansas City just kept the ball. That's all they had to do. You keep the ball away from them. And Josh Allen, if you, for example, go out and score on the first drive, and it's 7-0, and then you force a 3-and-out, that significantly hurts the Bills' chances, and it significantly helps Baltimore's chances, because if Baltimore goes up 14-0 in this game, it's over. If you go up by 14, that's goes for either team, because we talked about it. Lamar and Baltimore are not a play from behind type of team. So for those of you who are betting, it's 2.5-point favorites are Buffalo. So man, that's They're calling a tight game, and from what I would say right now, I think if you're looking at it from a just strictly football point of view, I think Baltimore has more weapons both on offense and on defense. You talked about Marcus Peters being, a huge force, but Calais Campbell and some of the stuff that they're able to do up front is really going to hurt, because let's be honest, Devin Singletary is not the guy for them, right? So if you could stop Devin Singletary and stop Stephon Diggs, that's a really tough matchup for Buffalo. So obviously a big game for Buffalo and that franchise in that city, but I like Baltimore both with the points, and I'll take them. I think they run away with this one, to be quite honest.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, and again, we mentioned, Buffalo's a team on the come up. The NFC, the AFC East now. It's kind of a wide open division. Now that Tom Brady is in Tampa, we saw how much he meant to New England, and they didn't even make the playoffs. And we'll talk about the Jets with them hiring Robert Salah earlier, and then They hired him, and then you have Miami that's on the come up. You have Buffalo's on the come up. So, you got a couple of nice teams that are on the come up. One's kind of stuck in the middle, and one is reinventing themselves. But yeah, I think there's just too much offensive fire. Now, if Buffalo's defense shows up and gives Baltimore fits, it'd be another story. But there's really nothing, like you mentioned, you would think that the game would have been over by the third quarter in that game last week between Buffalo and Indianapolis, and it just wasn't. I mean, they were still in it. Indianapolis had many chances to win, but Phillip Rivers just couldn't get it done, and Buffalo was able to sneak out of that. But I don't think you can do that against the rush attack, and especially if they get the confidence between Lamar and JK and Gus. And let me say this too, I know this is like the way too early prediction, but I would keep an eye on J.K. Dobbins fantasy-wise next year.
Oh, for sure.
Because I kept saying to myself, I'm like, J.K. ran this same exact type of offense in Ohio State.
Yeah.
So I was confused on why he had such a slow start. But you've noticed as of late, he pretty much took Mark Ingram's spot.
Yeah.
And he's really starting to come along in that offense. So, I think JK kind of, if they win, so you're going to watch the game today. If they win today, then I would keep an eye and see how they develop again in the AFC title game against who knows. I would keep my eye on him, and I would keep my eye on JK. I think JK is maybe he was just getting adjusted to the NFL speed, and now that he's gotten to the NFL speed, like bro, this ain't Northwestern or Illinois or Iowa or any of these guys. No, these are full-grown, swole-ass men coming after you right now. But I think he got used to the speed, and he's done such a great job that, again, Mark Ingram is a healthy scratch for today's game. So,
and John,
that's going to be interesting.
John Harbaugh's like he's like the Tom Thibodeau of the NFL. He hates playing rookies. For some reason or another, he just does not like playing rookie. I mean, that was one of the main reasons why Lamar sat. I mean, it was obvious when they drafted Lamar that he was the superior quarterback, but they still trotted out Joe Flacco for, half a season that year just to see what they could get out of him. So, yeah, that's another factor is next year they're going to take some of those leashes off of Dobbins, and I agree. I think he had 8 touchdowns in something like a half a season of playing this year. He didn't really play much the first 6 games. So, that's a tremendous point. Before we get to tomorrow's games, I want to talk some UFC, and I also want to talk to you about the Harden trade, which we haven't had a chance to get to, but I want to talk to you a little bit about our sponsors, guys. It's rmtalk.com. Rolling Meadows Talk is a new local news and offer website for the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Local deals, events, business directories, and much more. Again, it's RM as in Rolling Meadows Talk, TALK.com. You guys saw us last week. We were live remotely at Reps Place Sports Bar in Rolling Meadows. Always have a blast when we're there. They always take care of us. The food is great. The staff is great. We love Mike over there. So much appreciation to them for hosting us and continue to be a partner of the show. And again, guys, we talked a little bit about it before the holiday season with some of the offers that they have, when it came to gift cards. But I would just suggest you go to rmtalk.com. If you guys are in Facebook right now and watching through Facebook, go ahead and look up a Rolling Meadows Talk and like the page, share it out, do whatever you got to do. But rmtalk.com is the website. We got to support our local small businesses here, guys. So, this is a great way for us to kind of keep in touch with the local news and get as many offers as possible. Might as well get some bang for your buck, especially around this time of the year. We don't know what's going to happen financially here, so let's continue to support small businesses and continue to help out the local teams that we need to do. Which again, Reps, we really appreciate them, and Reps Place Sport Bar in Rolling Meadows, tremendous location, tremendous food. Go check them out, and again, it's rmtalk.com. All right, Nick. How do you see what's the first game tomorrow? I think it's the Browns and the Chiefs, right?
It's the Browns and the Chiefs.
Whew.
So this is another one I'm having a hard problem with because, easily I could have been like, man, it's going to be Chiefs straight up, man.
Yeah, I think everyone's playing that game.
Chiefs is going to show up. But dude, you can't take away from what Cleveland did last week against Pittsburgh, and you mentioned it, especially defensively. They didn't have Denzel Ward, and then they had a few other guys who were out really basically from the COVID. It wasn't even really. Yeah. I think Ward didn't have COVID, but I think a couple other their defensive players did. And dude, they really stopped the run. Pittsburgh really doesn't run the ball that much as is, but whatever they tried to do, they didn't. They made Big Ben throw the ball 65 times, and all Big Ben did was throw 4 interceptions and fumble the ball once.
Yeah. I
think Myles Garrett is going to be a problem. And I think Myles Garrett is going to be a problem to where it's going to affect Patrick Mahomes. Like, I know you and I, we call him Jesus, but he does. There are times where Patrick Mahomes does look human.
Yeah.
And I'm saying there might be a half and half here. I think there's going to be times where Mahomes is really going to look like Jesus, but I think there's going to be a lot of times where he's going to look like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, right.
He's going to look like a man, and I think Cleveland has the defense to do it. When I look at it offensively, I think the keys are the running game. You mentioned Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, depending on who you're talking to. These are 2, if not the top 10, at least top 15 running backs in the game, and you got them as a 1-2 punch. That really helps out, and I thought you made a great point earlier where you said after Jarvis Landry, the receiving pool takes a huge dip, especially when you don't have Odell out there anymore. But the crazy thing is Cleveland actually played better without Odell.
Yeah.
So that might be a question in the offseason that Cleveland's going to have to address. It's like, look, I want to bring another guy in. It just can't be Odell Beckham Jr. It has to be somebody else.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, though, as far as this game is concerned, I think Cleveland. What's Cleveland?
So they're giving Cleveland 10 points right now. So that's they're clearly favoring Kansas City. So -10 for KC.
And I would, if I was a betting man, I'd easily take that plus
I take
10
it too. Yeah.
Because I think that's too much.
Way too much.
I think Cleveland's a lot better. Right. But I think I'm gonna take Kansas City. This is what I'll say. I'm gonna take Kansas City to win this game. I do think Cleveland covers the 10, but I wouldn't be shocked if we came on this show next Saturday.
Talk about an upset.
we're talking about an upset because once again, like I just mentioned, having that first bye is okay and everything. Because remember, dude, before the pandemic, before we added in an extra playoff team. The 1 had the bye and the 2 had the bye.
Right.
Now it's just the 1 having the bye. But sometimes having that bye, let's take the New York Giants in 2007. Was it 2007?
Against the Patriots?
That's the team that won like 9 straight road games. They were the 5th best team that year because they beat Tampa. They were either the 5th or the 6th best team that year. And they had to go out and beat the number 1 team. And then they had to because I think that's the year that Eli outdueled Brett Favre before he left
Green Bay.
Before he left Green Bay and they turned the reins over to Aaron Rodgers. I think it was that year. So my thing is that with Cleveland, I wouldn't be shocked that there's an upset. That's all I'm going to say. I think there's just so much momentum for them because think about it, with as good as Pittsburgh has been at home under Big Ben, you would have thought that would have been a layup for Pittsburgh for a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in almost as long as Tampa. But they came out there, smacked them in the mouth, and kept the lead. I don't think Kansas City will make the same mistakes. So I still think Kansas City wins, but if Cleveland won, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, did you watch the game? Cleveland just upset Kansas City. I can't believe it. I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, damn, they actually pulled it off. So that's kind of my feelings on that one.
And I agree with you. Listen, I take the 10 points with Cleveland all day, every day if I'm a betting man because, when you look at it, Kansas City is going to be missing Sammy Watkins. Not saying he's like a giant part of what they do, but still one less guy.
But that's a big loss, though, dude. That's
a
big loss, because think about it. Sammy Watkins is kind of the safety valve if Tyreek Hill is being double-teamed and can't get open.
Yeah, and Hardman is like in the same mold of Hill, so it's very hard for you to use them at the same time. And then we're talking about Demarcus Robinson and obviously Travis Kelce. Another huge one is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We don't know if he's questionable, and a lot of people think he will play. We don't know whether or not he will play. And then again, Cleveland is really banged up on the defensive side of the ball, but also offensive line. Jack Conklin, one of the best tackles in the league, he is questionable. And then you're also looking at a couple of tight ends that are questionable, including David Njoku. But I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think it's about, first of all, who gets the ball last. I think that's going to have a lot to do with this game. I think it's going to be that close. I think if it's, let's say, for example, 23-20 in favor of Kansas City, and you give the ball back to Cleveland with 2 minutes left, I'm not so sure Kansas City makes it out alive there, because you're going to have to stop Baker in a crunch time situation. But likewise, I think Cleveland is going to have to establish a lead early, because Kansas City, we know how quickly they can score. Like, can't tell you how many times I've watched games of Kansas City over the last few years where you're thinking, wow, they're going to lose this game. Holy cow, this is not looking good for them. Just thinking about the Raiders earlier this year and the way that the Raiders beat them once, and then the second game almost beat them. Talk about the Buffalo game that came down a little bit, closer to the wire. But Kansas City, to me, is going to have to be a team that proves it, because, again, you talked about it. Sitting out a week, man, it's one of those things where I think Cleveland has a very clear advantage in this one, because they are, fresh off of a game. I know a lot of people think that's crazy to say, but being fresh off of a game last week is a lot better than having not played in almost 2.5 weeks. So, I think Cleveland, if they can come out early and establish the run, especially because you and I both know Kansas City's defense is even when they are great, it's because they're taking away the ball, right? So if they could take away the ball, that's great. But if you continue this bend but don't break mentality, you're going to break eventually against Cleveland, especially how good they are in the red zone too. That's another huge factor. So I agree with you. I like the Browns, especially plus the 10 points. But if I had to do a pure pick 'em, I'd still go with Jesus right now, because I think when you look at it, I think Patrick Mahomes is starting something special here. I don't want to be too over dramatic here, but if he can win this game, he's one more game away from back-to-back Super Bowls. And I don't care what anyone says. That is special. And it really is. And when you're able to do what he's done, not only on the field, but then off the field, being the superstar that he is off the field now, and he's in every commercial, and now he's like doing commercial with Troy Polamalu, and and the next thing you know, he's like on Dancing with the Stars. I'm just telling you, this guy's got superstar written all over him already. And then if you're able to add to your legacy here, back-to-back Super Bowls and possible back-to-back Super Bowl wins, this guy's putting himself in rare air if he's able to do that. And I do truly believe that Andy Reid and everybody there, Eric Bieniemy, who's their offensive coordinator, who we talked about earlier this year, he's going to be interviewing for a lot of jobs. He's one of the reasons why Deshaun Watson's so pissed at Houston, because they didn't interview the guy that they want to be there in Eric Bieniemy. So I think the offensive game plan, one thing you can always say about Kansas City, execution may not be there. Game plan is almost always on 10. They almost always know what to do. Execution is one thing or another, right? The players take care of the execution. But the game planning, man, oh man, is Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. And let's give credit to them on defense too. The name of their coordinators escaping me, but they turn over the ball when they need to, and they get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes when they need to. So I think if they can do that in this game, they'll be in a good position. And by the way, the Packers and Rams just kicked off. We've got around 11 minutes left here in the first quarter, and Packers have the ball here, not necessarily driving. They're around midfield. Oh, never mind. They're in Rams territory here. So if you guys are watching on that, let's talk about the Bucks and Saints, man. I know that
Yes,
was
sir.
one that I think I was really excited to get your input on, because I have a pretty cut and dry input on this one. I think right now, obviously, if you're looking at the small sample size of these two teams earlier, everybody's just going to say the Saints are going to run away with this one. The Saints have no problem with this one. Da da da. But I saw what you saw last week in New Orleans, which is they are not a perfect team. They don't have a perfect defense. Their offense can get stagnant at times, and we both know right now that, and I think you mentioned it earlier, I don't see it on the injury report, but it sounds like Devin White's going to be coming back, which is going to be a ginormous help, because I think you mentioned it earlier with Alvin Kamara and the Bears. Oh, can the Bears handle that? And the thing with Alvin Kamara is you need linebackers with this guy. If you don't have the linebackers with this guy, it's not going to work out, because safeties cannot handle this guy's strength and ability to move within space. And then obviously, when it comes down to it, corners are just not going to be able, you're not going to put a corner on Alvin Kamara. So having Devin White and then obviously, he's him and Levante David are like 1-2, if not, two of the best in the league in the middle. And by the way, it's -3 for New Orleans. So clearly Vegas, not taking the route that we talked about earlier, which is that New Orleans going to run away with this thing. I think Tampa has been a lot more competitive in games, and Patrick Robinson is out for New Orleans. Looks like Ledbetter, very big, and then obviously Alex Kappa. You guys lost last week to injured reserve. I know you guys signed Earl Watford, who it's just about as good as it gets. Signing Earl Watford, that's probably as good of an offensive lineman that you can sign this late into the season. So I don't know if he'll be starting for you guys, but that's a nice little cog for you guys. But give me your ideas on this game here. You guys are on prime time tomorrow.
Yeah, we're on prime time tomorrow. So you got to go back and let's look at the first two games. Okay, so obviously New Orleans beat Tampa in New Orleans in Week 1. And, the thing we'll say was Tom Brady, didn't have a preseason, and, they struggled, and New Orleans pretty much brought the same team last year as we had this year, this, that, and everything else. Fine. But then I went back and I looked at that debacle that was the Sunday night game in Tampa. And I think what ended up doing in Tampa in that game, if you think about it, was I think the reason why Tampa was so bad offensively was because that was AB's first game in Tampa. The week before, they had struggled against the New York Giants, but then Mike Evans had gotten either Evans or Godwin, one of those two got hurt. So you go into the game the next week. It's the Sunday night game against the Saints, AB's first game. I think Tom Brady put a lot of time and effort in trying to develop the chemistry between him and AB, and it wasn't there. So next thing you know, now Tom Brady's scrambling because the defense is struggling, because as you mentioned with Aaron Rodgers and 3 and outs, like if you get 3 and outs in the first 4 drives, well, that's what New Orleans did to Tampa. Yeah. They got the 3 and out on the first drive. They come out, they score. They get a 3 and out on the next drive. Next thing you know, it's 14-0. Then they got another 3 and out, and next thing you know, it's 17-0. Yeah. And then it pretty much the floodgates opened after that. But you have to at some point the reason why this game is, it's so easy for people like you said to say the Saints, because the Saints beat the Bucks twice. But the Saints never played playoff Tom Brady. And they never played playoff Antonio Brown. And they didn't play playoff Tampa Bay. Let me tell you the biggest key in this entire game is big number 76. I have never been more proud of Donovan Smith than I was last week. Because even I told you, dude, I was super nervous. I was nervous that Chase Young was going to get in there at will. I was nervous that Donovan Smith was going to have arguably the worst game of his life. He struggled almost all year. Dude, Donovan Smith held his own. Now, exactly what I said I thought they were going to do last year, they ended up doing. They ended up clipping a couple times with Rob Gronkowski on that side to help Donovan Smith out. It was a couple times where, as you mentioned, Keyshawn Vaughn did a nice job of clipping him a couple times. It was a couple times at Leonard Fournette. So Smith had some help, but there were them times where Smith was one-on-one on Chase Young. You know, in the 40 pass snaps that they had, Tampa Bay, Chase Young had 3 pressures. Never didn't even touch what's his name? Tom Brady. That's why I think that Cameron Jordan versus Donovan Smith matchup is huge, because if Donovan Smith can bring us the same exact effort he did against Washington, against New Orleans, I think Tom Brady has enough time in the pocket to pick him apart. I think the other point that you mentioned is Patrick Robinson being out, because here's the scary part. We know that Marshawn Lattimore, as of late, has had Mike Evans' number, right? So then you're probably going to end up having maybe Gardner Johnson, who, oh, by the way, got another Bear kicked out in the game last week. You don't think that there's a trend in that? Like, it's easy to say, well, the Bears need to be more disciplined, not hit Gardner Johnson in the face. I'm trying to figure out, what is he saying?
What is he saying, right?
2 Bears people try to punch him in his face.
Yeah, and what did he say to Michael Thomas that made Michael Thomas want to punch him in the face too? Remember, Michael Thomas was the one who punched him. Yeah.
Exactly. So he's saying something. You know, there's one thing where you talk trash and get in someone's head. Yeah. There's another thing when you talk trash and get in someone's head, to where 3 people have now tried to hit you in the face and say something. So I'm saying Gardner Johnson's saying something, but there's a great chance that he's going to have to guard Chris Godwin.
That's
so
trouble.
So who's guarding AB?
Yeah, that's trouble.
The same Antonio Brown, who I just mentioned, has now scored a touchdown in the last 4 or 5 games. I think he scored a touchdown since their bye week.
Wow.
I know for a fact he had one against Atlanta. I know he had one against Detroit. He had one against Atlanta again. And then he had another one in a game where he was wide open in that game against Washington. So, playoff Breeze versus playoff Brady. You mentioned it. Devin White has been cleared of the COVID protocols. He's coming in. I just need Devin White to put one good hit on Drew Brees. One. He doesn't have to hurt him. I don't need you to hurt him. I just need you to let him know that I'm back and I'm here. Because if you rattle Drew Brees, it's a wrap. Because the Bucs are already coming in with the best rush defense in the game. So 2 things that the Buccaneers need to do on defense that I'll be straight. Actually, 3 things. A, Devin White hit Drew Brees. B, make sure that a linebacker has his eye every time on Alvin Kamara when they're going back to pass, because he's so dangerous out of the backfield that a 5-yard catch with no one around him will turn into a 30-yard catch real quick. And see, the secondary has got to step up. All these guys open by 5 yards crap has got to stop. I think they can do at least 2 of those 3. But I like Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady kind of went to the guys like, how does it feel to actually win in the playoffs? How does this feeling feel? Like, think about it. This is actually a step above what Tom Brady did last year. Remember last year around this time, we were I wouldn't say making fun, but we were bringing up Tom Brady throwing a pick six in his career in New England, almost the same way Jameis ended his career in Tampa Bay. And now you bring him over, and Tom Brady made almost absolutely no mistakes in that game last week. I like Tampa on the upset. I've been riding with them all year, but I like playoff Brady over playoff Breeze. So I'm going to take Tampa. I think I was talking to my boy earlier, and I had told him I think Tampa wins this game 24-21. I think they upset them. The Saints are a very good football team. I've been very humble about it. I haven't even really made fun of Saints fans or talked to Saints fans because I really don't have no leg to step on because they beat us.
Right.
But if you really break the stuff down, and you really look at that game, and then you start looking at Tampa as time goes on, and you're starting to see Tom Brady's clicking with everybody. Now, the only thing that sucks is Rojo is a game-time decision. Leonard Fournette will get the starts, but Rojo if Rojo plays, and you can get that running game going with Rojo and Leonard, and then hopefully you could bring in Keyshawn for those, to bring him out of the backfield, a la Alvin Kamara. The Saints ain't stopping that defense. Or that offense. All I'm saying is, if Ryan Fitzpatrick could put up 48 on the New Orleans Saints a couple years back, with almost the same weapons, I don't see how Tom Brady can't do it in the playoffs. Because the New Orleans Saints are due for another playoff L and a playoff meme, and we'll be the ones to give it to them. So I like Tampa in this game on Sunday.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to mention too is that the key factor for me is the Buccaneers secondary, because when the Buccaneers secondary plays well, that whole team tends to play really well. It's amazing, when you give up the big plays. Like, I think a perfect example is that Kansas City game where, the defense, maybe the front seven was not, at fault for this, but gave up so many big plays to Tyreek Hill. He had that huge first quarter, and then boom, you got busted coverages, and guys aren't within 5 yards of the receiver. And then we saw the ending of that game, but we also talked about how in that game, Tampa went into the locker room and then came out and then looked like a different team. And Tom had them running, an offense that was like clockwork. And I mentioned it last week during our live. I think it makes a big difference to have Tom Brady around a team that's inexperienced. When you have a team that's inexperienced in playing in these types of situations, maybe the only guys on your offense that can say that they're, otherwise are Gronk and AB. Otherwise, you're looking at a offense that's pretty much all guys who are used to playing in regular season and not really having much postseason play. So to have Tom Brady on the sidelines, it's like almost the opposite of the DK Metcalf effect that I was talking about earlier. It's like DK Metcalf on the sidelines yelling at his teammates. That doesn't help you, because you're DK Metcalf. Nobody looks at you like. But if Tom Brady is in somebody's face, or if Tom Brady is pumping somebody up, that goes a long way. So I agree with you. I think this is going to be one of the most intriguing matchups, I think, of all the playoffs, because no matter what happens from here on out, we already know that a 40-plus-year-old quarterback is going to be going to the NFC Championship. And it's amazing to think about it, because, I'm sure the regular season didn't go exactly how Tampa Bay fans expected, but if you told Tampa Bay fans the day after you signed Tom Brady that you'd be going to the NFC Championship, I think you would take that as a huge W and a huge factor. And I think you mentioned it last week. Tom wants to come back next year as well, which, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be okay with losing in the playoffs. But just to know that you have Tom there for those big moments is huge. So I agree with you. I think Tampa Bay has a huge, I think they're able to win this game. Let's put it that way. I think the people who are talking about New Orleans as if Tampa Bay has no shot, I think that's a really huge mistake, and I think Vegas, said it all with their line, which is, -3. Like, this is going to be a close game, even till the end. I think it's going to come down to those first couple drives, and I think, if you see like a 3-and-out out of Tampa Bay early on, and New Orleans goes down and scores, that could be a bad omen. So overall, I think right now, similar to like what you were talking about earlier, I think my head is telling me New Orleans because of the sample size that we've seen. But I think with how closely I followed Tampa Bay doing the show with you this year and just kind of being intrigued by the players overall, I think this is going to be a really interesting one. So I'm not gonna say that I think if you're betting, by the way, this is probably one of the tougher games to bet on in all of football this week, because when you're looking at it, this could really go either way, and the -3 is probably not enough for you to just throw your money at at Tampa Bay like this. But it'll be an interesting game either way. And by the way, halfway through the first quarter, it's Packers 3, Rams nothing. The Rams right now are driving and actually in Packers territory, so that should be an interesting one. And while we're talking, I was watching Carlos Condit and Matt Brown, and Oh my God! Both these guys need to retire. That's all I'm gonna say. Is it's not looking great. Carlos is looking really bad on the feet, and Matt's looking really bad on the ground. It's a third round right now. I haven't been watching close enough to see who will win, but after this, we will see the main event, which is Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway, which is a pretty interesting one. And then also, by the way, the whole huge announcement by Dana White earlier. I hate to burst people's bubble, but there really wasn't a quote-unquote huge announcement. What Dana White essentially said was Khabib will fight again if Khabib sees something quote-unquote spectacular in the lightweight division at UFC 257. We all know what that means. What that means is if Conor McGregor wins against Dustin Poirier, then Khabib will more than likely come back to fight Conor. But if you look at it, like if Dustin wins that fight, what is Khabib coming out of retirement to fight Dustin Poirier for? I just don't understand that. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that one. And then also, by the way, this week, next week, the games will all be on Sunday, and then obviously the week and a half following that will be Super Bowl Sunday. So really big.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about this. Am I the only one that's crazy to think that so look at it like this. I know that the WWE is on USA and the WWE is on Fox for the regular show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But remember, the WWE went through a period where, they were on pay-per-view, and, if you got WrestleMania in HD on pay-per-view, it was damn near $90, right?
Yeah.
Until they made their own WWE network, which is $10 a month, and you get all the pay-per-views, including WrestleMania. The only downfall to that is that sometimes so many people I think it's in a couple weeks is the Royal Rumble, and the Royal Rumble obviously is the big setup pay-per-view for WrestleMania in March/April. So my question is this: does the UFC really need ESPN for their pay-per-views? You already have the Fight Pass, right? UFC has the Fight Pass where for like $10 a month, or $10, $11, $12 a month, you can watch some of the old UFC fights. You can go into the deep library and you can see this and you can see that. But my biggest problem is, why don't you have something similar? If you're going to promote something like that, why don't you do something similar that the WWE is doing? I'm pretty sure that nobody, that's too strong. Of 100% of the people that watch the UFC, I bet you 15% of them have the Fight Pass to go and watch the old fights. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have the WWE network because I like to watch a lot of the current pay-per-views, so I don't have to drop $60-$70 to watch a flipping pay-per-view or have to stream it in order for me to watch it.
Yeah.
I could just watch it on my phone and pull up the network. The UFC should do, and then I just happen to watch the old pay-per-views because I enjoy them and they're there to my discretion, and I happen to enjoy and sometimes relive the old days. I would love to do the same thing with the UFC where I could just fire up the Fight Pass. The pay-per-view is on. I would bet you if you put all your pay-per-views on a Fight Pass similar to the WWE network, excuse me, you wouldn't need to charge people $70 and then tweet that they're finding a way to stream it illegally,
right? Because
no one wants to pay $70 for a subpar UFC fight.
As if the fan is cheap. You guys don't want to pay $70 twice a month. What the hell is wrong with you? And it's dude, I will give you some insight. And by the way, Carlos Condit did win that one by decision, which looks Matt Brown was not happy about. But I'll give you a little insight on that ESPN stuff because remember, the UFC had the original agreement with Fox, which was they would be on Fox Sports 1, and then some cards throughout the year would be on the actual Fox channel. Well, when UFC went shopping, they went shopping for money. They did not go shopping for like what's going to get the most exposure, because let's be honest, if they would have stayed with Fox, you would have had more people who had Fox, Sports 1, more people who had Fox in general. Obviously, pretty much everybody in this country has access to Fox. So, just that alone, it wasn't about the exposure for them. ESPN came with Disney money. That's what it was. Is Disney realized that the UFC was going to be sort of, taking a huge step up, and they wanted to, and they by the way, it's happening. It's odd we mention it, because one of the things that was in that contract was the UFC wanted to be on ABC, and they said when they look at ABC in the same light of previous boxing legends when you were watching Muhammad Ali and some of these other guys on ABC, and trying to link that up to the UFC, which I totally understand. The big thing is that the UFC right now is had a plan, and then COVID threw a wrench in that plan, and then because they were one of the only organizations to stay alive and keep going, they had to readjust their plan multiple times. And I don't know if you know this or not, but in Abu Dhabi right now, there's fans in the crowd. They have opened up, and they are, taking fans. And as you can't be you and I living in Abu Dhabi. If you're living in Abu Dhabi, either your mom and dad are doing really well. Yeah, either your mom and dad are doing really well, or you're doing pretty well. So, right. I'm sure those tickets weren't cheap, and I think the UFC at this point is just trying to collect. Because remember, a lot of people forget. I think it was 4 years ago now. WME bought the UFC for $4 billion. It wasn't worth $4 billion. That's the huge thing, is they're buying it for future growth and seeing what was happening. Obviously the UFC is very successful, but it hasn't come close to meeting the $4 billion demand that it was from 4 years ago. So to give you an idea about this, ESPN came to UFC and said, hey, why don't we make, because remember, the first few months, you could still order a pay-per-view through Comcast. Like, you could go through your TV and order a pay-per-view. And then ESPN put the kibosh on that, because they're like, you know what? If we're going to have all these people, if we're going to be paying to support the traffic of ESPN Plus and adding UFC and this and that, we might as well just have all the pay-per-views go through. So now, not only do you have to, buy ESPN Plus, but then if you want the pay-per-view, you have to do it through ESPN Plus. That's why it's just so silly what Dana White is doing right now with this whole, going after pirators. Like, I have no problem telling anybody I haven't bought a UFC fight since Diaz McGregor 2. Okay, I've watched pretty much every single UFC event that's ever happened since then, and I haven't bought one single pay-per-view. So I think the UFC is starting to recognize that, and they want to go after some of these big international hosts who are hosting these streams for us. I don't care. To me, I'm going to continue to illegally stream, because I'm sorry. There's no event that you can put together that's making me think I'm going to take $70 and put this to the UFC. I just can't do that. So
only way I do it is if the entire main card is all championship fights.
Yeah. And it's
the only way I'm doing it.
That's the thing that bothers me, Nick, is that it's possible. They can do that. By the way, the UFC should look into making more weight divisions. The fact that we have such a huge jump from 185 to 205, there's easily one or two weight divisions in there. The jump from, to say that a heavyweight can be anywhere between, I think it's 240 to 260. That's steep. I think what's his face, Greg Hardy, he was one of the only guys in the history of the UFC that almost missed weight in the heavyweight division. He almost was above the heavyweight limit, and that's almost unheard of. So to me, there's so many opportunities for the, it's crazy. So for the UFC, there's opportunity. Like we talked about it, we gave them flack late last year when, you had these cards that had 7 fights on them and 3 of the fights, you've never heard of either one of those fighters. 2 of the fights were like fighters, and one of them was like an Instagram model who just so happened to have a nice following. The UFC has a lot of strategy. That's why I think this is going to be really important for them between next week with Poirier McGregor, and then they have the following fights after that. They're going to have a couple of different fights, which I'm blanking on, which are pretty big fights. But you're right, it's possible they can make a whole main card of championship fights. That's possible to do. The problem is they feel that it cheapens the value of a championship fight, and I disagree. I think it gives you more people who want to spend money on those fights, but the UFC they're fighting a lost cause here, because there's no way you're going to get every single person who watches that fight. I mean, I'm telling you, I know people who are like diehard. One of them is actually, he writes MMA stuff for MMAJunkie.com. This guy is the guy for UFC, and he's like, I don't think I've ever paid for a UFC event. So this is not just us scumbags who are like, oh, these guys don't, these are people who are in the industry who are like, I'm not paying $70 for this, no way. So for Dana White to single us out, it's just silly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. I'm pretty sure between Vince and Triple H and the headwigs of the WWE, they're probably thinking the same thing. It's like, dude, how come our pay-per-view sales are so down? Why? Because people don't want to pay $90 for WrestleMania. Yeah. And WrestleMania, if you watch the older WrestleManias, they're like 2.5 hours tops.
Right now, oh my God.
Dude, these WrestleManias are almost 4, 5, 6 hours long.
Didn't they have to split it up last year into 2 nights?
Yeah, because of COVID.
Got it. Okay.
Because the WrestleMania was supposed to be in Tampa. It was supposed to be at Raymond James, but obviously COVID showed its ugly face. So then they were at the Performance Center they're at now, and they really, as a matter of fact, and I don't know what's going to happen, but there were reports where Triple H actually went to Vince McMahon and said, hey, maybe we should consider making WrestleMania a 2-night event. And if that's the case, Triple H is right. Dude, it is tough to make people sit in the same seat for 6 hours for a wrestling show.
Long time.
And the only real reason why you did it last year was because it was The Undertaker's last WrestleMania match. So him and AJ Styles fought in this movie-esque match where I thought was actually pretty decent. But what sucked was Drew McIntyre, who all but deserved to become the WWE champion, the WWE championship win looked stupid because he won the belt in front of nobody.
Yeah,
in the biggest event in wrestling history.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Wrong,
But now that they have the Performance Center or the Thunderdome where people can watch the match from their houses, it's not as bad, and they're trying to make it as much as a show as they can.
Yeah.
But somebody up there had to been like, dude, we can't keep charging people $80. Or here's a crazy thing. Why don't we charge everybody $10 a month and get all the pay-per-views, and maybe we can get those subscriptions up and we can get millions of people to buy into it. And that's what they did. Dude, it would be a perfect thing for the UFC, dude, because if Dana White is sitting there set tripping about, I'm sick of people pirating, guess what? It's going to be very worse when people just don't buy it.
And what do they say, Nick? You catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar. If you continue to show the fans as if they're the bad guys in this situation and not the multi-billion-dollar corporation that could easily, make this more accessible and more affordable, at this point, man, I'm done sympathizing. You and I both know we don't sympathize with billionaires and millionaires over here, okay? I'm not going to sit here, to hear Jerry Reinsdorf and some of these owners of teams talking about, I've lost millions of dollars since last year, and this is just rough. And by the way, the Cubs, their idiotic ownership trying to blame COVID for their collapse and their absolute, COVID has absolutely nothing to do. You know what had something to do with it? You guys decided you wanted to renovate Wrigley Field and instead put a whole damn hotel there and spent billions of dollars on this project, and it didn't yield you shit because nobody goes to Wrigley for the ballpark experience. You're going there to get shit faced with your friends and go drink at the bars afterwards and go home. Nobody's like, I'm gonna go to the multi-billion-dollar motel or hotel that they created for me. No, this is a fan experience, and they don't understand that.
And let's talk about that for a second, because that right there is a clear case of the Ricketts family buying a team just to buy a team.
Yeah.
Because if you've been to the North Side before, that is exactly what it is. Wrigley Field happens to be in the middle of pretty much a bar-like
Park district, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a bar-like park district. Right. That's the best way to put it. There's no such thing as, hey guys, let's get a hotel, then we can drink as much as we want.
Right.
And then we can just go here and sleep it off. No, hell no.
No.
That is not what the North Side is about. So why the Ricketts thought that would have been a great idea. So let's make sure I got this straight. I'm going to pay $100 for the ticket. Then beers run $9 a pop. And then I still want to, if I don't get faded at the game, I'm still want to go to a bar and hang out.
Yeah.
That's another $30, $40 for me to drop $200 for a hotel room so I can sleep somewhere.
Yeah.
Miss me with that nonsense. That's crap.
Yeah. And God forbid you want a hot dog
right,
at the game. God forbid you want a hot dog at the game. Then you're down another $12,
Exactly. And at least they don't have the balls to at least grill it like Guaranteed Rate Field and actually make it taste decent.
Those steamed, boiled ass.
I've never been so disappointed. This is one of the reasons why I hate going to Wrigley.
Yeah.
That's why when people like, hey, yo, Nick, you want to come with me watch the Sox and Royals game? I mean, clearly I may not want to watch it because I have no interest in either team. But so I can go and eat the food there? Oh, more. Yeah, I got $100 in my back pocket just waiting to burn.
Yeah.
And I will walk in there 100 deep, full as hell by the time I get out of there.
Yeah.
Because I've done maxed the helmet nachos, 3 dogs. The only thing that sucks about Guaranteed Rate, this whole $4 for water thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's
same Aquafina water. You're gonna charge me $4 for a piss off.
See, the
Other
thing
than that,
is,
though, I have no problem with
at the Sox games, you know how it is. Like for the good food, you're paying $15 plus, right?
Easy.
You don't necessarily feel ripped off by that, right? Because when you have the loaded baked potato, or you have the brisket, or you have some of the stuff that they have around the ballpark, you're like, this is damn good. And yeah, I pay $15, but I'm out here, whatever. I'm paying $12 a beer. They have those craft beer stands where all these white people are like $15 for this, and it's like, what? You're paying $15 because this craft beer that was made in somewhere in Wisconsin. So, and I want to talk to you because I know we're kind of coming towards the end here, but I want to talk to you about a couple things before we jump into the Harden stuff. We didn't get to talk much about the Lindor trade last week and sort of the effect that it had on the league at large. And you and I had talked last week that I think the Sox were close to signing Liam Hendricks. They did make that happen this week and sign Liam Hendricks. Huge, big-time closer that will really help the White Sox. But we're starting to see now more and more that teams like Cleveland, teams like Chicago, the Cubs, by the way, and just, really it seems like there's a few teams who are all in. It sounds like the Padres and the White Sox and some of these other teams that are making big moves. And obviously I know New York is always in that conversation, both teams. But then you're starting to see like the purging of assets from teams like the Cubs. We mentioned the Cubs. Obviously the big trade for them was Yu Darvish and getting rid of that. But, Chris Bryant also seems to be on his way out. Wilson Contreras also seems to be on his way out. I know Javi Baez avoided arbitration, but I was reading rumors that he might be a deadline guy next year, that if the Cubs don't like the trajectory of the team and the organization, he might be a deadline move next year. That would be a huge mistake in my opinion. But, it sounds like give me an idea of what you're thinking right now with the Yankees in particular about this Corey Kluber deal, because I know the deal is not ginormous. It's not like you're making a huge investment here, but clearly the Yankees looked at the market and saw how many many veterans were on there. You're going to take a chance either way. All the guys that are left now, we talked about like the Adam Wainwrights and some of these other guys that are out on the market right now. They're old anyways. You're going to take a chance on them. Why not take a chance on a former AL Cy Young winner, you know?
Right. And the thing is, I think this is one of those low risk, high reward type of situations because, like you mentioned, they only gave Corey Kluber like a 1 year, $10 million deal, basically to be the number 2 guy in New York. Yeah. Because it sounds like maybe the Yankees aren't so keen of bringing back Masahiro Tanaka. Oh, wow. I also think that the Yankees, and this is actually going to shock me that I'm going to say this, might actually be ready to go with the kids that they have been developing in their farm system. So that means, and I mentioned this to, I think I was talking to Christian as a matter of fact, because he's a diehard Yankees fan. You know, people sleep on how good Jordan Montgomery was when he came back after Tommy John last year. In particularly Game 4 of the divisional series against the Rays. He's the reason why we got to Game 5. You know, and what pissed me off about that game was the leash on Jordan Montgomery was so small. It was like, oh man, like if you look at that game, there was one point where the Rays had bases loaded, no outs in the third, and the Yankees were up like 2-0 at that time, and he got out of it unscathed. And his fastball, which when he started was around 92, when he got hurt, the pitch he had before he got hurt was around 89, but as he came back, it started touching 93 and 94, and I noticed that. Jordan Montgomery is good. Davy Garcia was another guy that I thought the Yankees made a huge mistake doing the whole platoon or whatever the F that crap is called. I thought that was stupid. Let the kid flip and pitch. Yeah. That's why you got him. Put him out there. I know it's the playoffs, it's the big thing and this and that. But between J-Mont, Davy Garcia, you're going to have Luis Severino potentially coming back around June or July. So you bring in a Corey Kluber, because I was like, why would you bring in Corey and not Trevor Bauer? One name came up, and that's Garrett Cole. Because I think whatever beef they have, Trevor Bauer might be like, hey, look, man, I can get past the beef. Garrett Cole's like, dude, you've been talking mad shit about me for the last X amount of years, and you just want me to put it to the side so you're going to pitch for the Yankees? Nah, I don't want him here. Yeah. And I think that's why you go off there, Corey Kluber. Plus, I've been hearing that Trevor Bauer wants like an insane amount of money.
He wants Garrett Cole money, essentially.
And you're not a Garrett Cole money type of pitcher, and that's not going to happen. So I like the move for Corey Kluber, and I really like it because the Yankees have had this fortunate thing happen for them when they bring in certain guys for that 1 year trial. It happens to work out. You got a guy, Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn was in pinstripes a year that they went into the playoffs, and he still had great stuff. They traded for him when he was in
Minnesota.
Minnesota, thank you. It was when he was in Minnesota, and they traded for him. And Lance Lynn was actually really good because the Yankees were having injuries in the pitching staff, but they were on the way to the playoffs. So I think Corey Kluber's that guy. Plus, remember, our pitching coach used to be his pitching coach when he was in Cleveland. So there's that connection there. So if the shoulder is okay, if we can get that Cy Young guy, not the playoff one that the Yankees knocked out a couple times, but the Cy Young guy when they won the pennant a few years back, the Yankees are going to be in good shape. Yeah. But I like the fact that they're changing of the guard, because I don't know what was said in that meeting between DJ and the Yankees, but you know who the real winner in that deal was? Believe it or not, it was the Yankees. Think about it like this. DJ said he wanted 5 years, $100 million, right? The Yankees come with an offer of like 4 for 75 because DJ's 33 years old. And the Yankees are getting tired of getting burned by having these long contracts with old dudes. Yeah. What they did to get from $20 million a year to basically $15 million a year. So DJ gets his years, but the Yankees don't drop $20 million, which is why you could bring in a move for Corey Kluber. So I like what the Yankees have done so far. I kind of want to say they're almost done, but I think the Yankees go after maybe one or two more bullpen arms. And at this point, man, like I said, you just got to play the kids.
Right.
I think Jamon is going to be a stud. I think Davey's going to be a stud. And you just need a stopgap until Luis Severino is ready by July or so. I would say I don't expect him to come back any later than or any earlier than July, like the All-Star break. But if you can get Severino to come back and get into his we still got Domingo.
I was going to say, did he retire or what happened with him?
He just stepped away to fix whatever issues was going on at home and himself. But it sounds like Domingo Germán is got his mind cleared. He's ready to come back because the Yankees told him when he said he wanted to step away. They were like, look, take all the time you need. We know you messed up. We know you jagged. It's not a good look, but I'd rather you take care of your family and yourself, and then you still got a spot with us. And I think he's ready to come back. So you're going to have Cole, Kluber, and potentially Severino when he comes back, Jamon, Davy Garcia, and then Domingo Germán. Because remember, Domingo Germán won 18 games a few years back. So I like the moves the Yankees have made so far. I like the fact they didn't bring back Brad Gardner. So now we can finally move on with the kids and put Clint Frazier in there. None of this platoon crap.
About time.
Put the man in left.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the only thing that sucks right now is that the Yankees are going to be without Gio Urshela. I forgot to mention this a couple weeks ago. He had to have a bone chip removed from his elbow.
Ouch.
So he's going to be out for 3 months. So hopefully we'll get him back by May or so. But, yeah, man, I like the Kluber move. I like they brought back DJ. And I think the Yankees are primed because the Red Sox are kind of rebuilding, even though they brought Alex Cora back. The Orioles are still rebuilding, even though they were a step above better last year than they were in the past. The Toronto Blue Jays I feel sorry for because they actually were throwing all kinds of money at Corey Kluber. He decided to go to the Yankees. And then all of a sudden this whole sweepstakes for the great George Springer has been kicked up. And the Blue Jays wanted to give George Springer like 7 years, 140. He's crying. He wants 175. Bro, you hit like 256 last year.
Yeah.
So how do you get $175 million out of batting 256? So I know that the Mets fans are chomping at the bit for them to go sign Springer because they need an outfielder. But I thought that Lindor trade, to move on to them, I thought the Lindor trade, at first I was like, man, the Mets almost gave him up for free until I realized that was their number 1, 2, 9, and 10 prospects. But the Mets farm system isn't that great.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The guys that were the blue chips are already up there. Dom Smith, Pete Alonso, obviously Noah was in the trade, but Jacob, all your blue chips are playing on your team.
Yeah. So
you just gave up a really defensively really good shortstop in Jimenez.
Jimenez, yeah.
And then you gave up 3 other prospects, and then Lindor gets $23 million, I think, or something high in the arbitration from the Mets. So they still never signed him to a long-term deal.
It's basically a 1-year deal if he decides he can walk next year.
And what's the Mets got to show for it? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. So, I think it's up to Steve Cohen right now. Does he, I heard that he's going on Twitter asking fans if he should sign this guy, and this guy. And George Springer was one of the guys, and a lot of Mets fans are saying yes. But, man, he wants a lot of money, though. Yeah. But dude, let me say this, man. Somewhere in the White Sox brass, whether it's Rick Hahn or Kenny Williams, is looking at the rest of the Central, and they're saying, dude, like, we got this bad boy by the balls to go out there and sign Liam Hendricks. And then I thought the picture you put up the other day was amazing. You have Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, and I forget who else was on there.
Dallas Keuchel or Lance Lynn, Dallas Keuchel, Liam Hendricks, and Lucas Giolito, 4 out of the top 10 AL Cy Youngs.
Exactly. And now they're on this pitching staff with this team that's on the come up that made the playoffs. So, yeah, they're signing guys, but and the White Sox farm system is still kind of decent. So, you got to give props to Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn and what they're doing with the White Sox. And because think about it, dude, Detroit is rebuilding, even though they played better last year and a lot of people thought they were rebuilding. Kansas City's rebuilding, Cleveland's rebuilding, and Minnesota just can hit the ball as best as the next team, but their pitching is not that great.
Yeah.
So I think this is that year where I don't want to say World Series quite yet, but I think the White Sox grab the Central by the balls, and they can make a real nice deep playoff run. So I like the job that the White Sox are doing. So, yeah man, I think the Yankees are in the same boat because the Rays seemingly got worse. They went out there and traded your best pitcher in Blake Snell to the Padres, who you mentioned are going all in. They're like, screw you, LA. You're not going to be the only team with glory in the West. So, you gotta bring that up. So, yeah, dude, I think the Yankees and the White Sox are prime. And then, you just have the AL West, and that's always a crapshoot because the only guaranteed I can tell you in the West is that Seattle is going to suck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We know. And even honestly, I mean, Texas too, a lot of people are putting them into the suck, range right away. But Texas, man, has made a lot of smart moves. One of them was letting go of Corey Kluber's contract, that they had signed him to. They also, traded Lance Lynn, and they got back a guy that's going to be a number 3 starter for them for the next 5 years too from the White Sox. So I'm just, I think right now the main thing, and I think you mentioned it too, like with some of these teams, Tampa Bay, for example, is just going to continue to play this gamble of, we can't afford to pay this player this much. Let's get as much as we can and just continue to trot out, what we think is going to be an analytically good team. But that only works so much. Like even like with Minnesota, Nelson Cruz is no guarantee to come back. Eddie Rosario is a free agent. I believe he hasn't signed yet. Donaldson is a big question mark for them now. I know he did well for them last year. Huge question mark. So the White Sox are in prime position right now to, at the very least, be contenders. But one thing that you have to, I want to give a little bit of credit where credit is due is that the White Sox are spending money, and that's something that they haven't done. They've done it materialistically here and there, but now with the new manager who clearly was not the GM's top choice, and clearly was not the search's top choice for managers overall, it makes a lot of sense when we had theories that Jerry Reinsdorf went to Rick Hahn and said, hire my buddy, and I'll get you the players that you think you need. And it looks like the White Sox are not done as well. I know that they made a couple international signings, including Yoenis Cespedes' younger brother, Yoelkis Cespedes, who probably won't be up this year, but maybe next year will be up. And we'll probably have a fully Cuban team by 2024, I think is what we're going for here. Because I love it, man. I fucking love it. You got to get where
the talent is.
Hey, dude. And I'm telling you, these Cuban kids, man, there's a lot of like speculation about like, ages, Jose Abreu. There's a lot of people say that Jose Abreu's got to be like in his late 30s right now, and like he probably came to this country and told them he was 24 when he was 28 or something like that. And there's a lot of that with Cubans, but I don't care how old you are. If you can go out and hit the ball like Jose Abreu, you could be 45 for all I care. I don't give a shit how old you are. Just keep doing what you're doing, right?
And I don't understand why that's such a huge problem. Like, who cares? Like, are we really gonna sit up here and have like this age be about,
oh, he's 26, but he said he was 24.
God, Well, you remember that's kind of what ruined what's his name's career. Remember Fausto Carmona?
Yeah.
That's not even his real name. I forget what it
was.
Yeah,
I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was something
simple. He was with Cleveland. He killed us with Cleveland, and next year you find out he's not even Fausto Carmona.
Right. But remember, Fausto came off that year where he damn near won the Cy Young, and then all this stuff came out where his real name's not even Fausto Carmona, and he wasn't 28, he was like 34, and then it just ruined his career because, all that stuff was hanging on his head, and he just was never the same pitcher. And I'm thinking to myself, who gives a crap?
Right.
Okay, the man said that he was 23, turns out he's 27. The man just won you 20 games and won the Cy Young. Is it that bad?
It's not that big of a deal. No.
Are you really that salty about it? Like I think there's just too much into it. But
yeah,
like you said, dude, at the end of the day, dude, if Jose Abreu was in his late 30s, 37, okay, he's the reigning AL MVP. So who gives a rat's ass?
Yeah.
Like it's not like there's like this age gap of how old you can be in Major League Baseball. He's the best hitting first baseman in the game, and he just proved it last year. So, I don't get that. I think that's just, that's just being stupid at the end of the day. But nah, dude, I'm high on the White Sox until you play my Yankees this year. But I'm super high on the White Sox. I think they're going to make moves and finally take a grip on the AL Central.
Yeah, and those are going to be some good games this year with the White Sox and Yankees, and I would imagine too we'll have some more fun as White Sox fans playing the Crosstown Classic next year with whoever the Cubs put on there.
And before we get into the NBA, before we close, can Mets fans please calm down? I understand you got Lindor, and I understand you're happy, but all of a sudden that Lindor trade makes the Mets the best team in the East.
The favorite.
Slow down.
Yeah, not even close.
Because you still have no bullpen.
Yeah, and to me, Atlanta's still far ahead of better. I think. Listen, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think the Marlins are going to be good this year. I think if you look at what that division shows, Philly's going to spend money because they have it. So that just shows you they're going to be competitive. The Marlins, even if they don't spend money, have so much young farm talent. They are going to be good this year. I'm telling you, the Marlins are going to be good this year. And then on top of it, Atlanta is still, the cream of the crop in that division. So the Mets have a lot of questions still to be answered, and a lot of them have to do with the bullpen, man. Like, Liam Hendricks was supposed to be an easy signing for the Mets, right? Because he's been one of the best, if not the best reliever in all of baseball the last 3 years, and the Mets were in on him. It's not like the Mets weren't in on him. They were in on him. It seems like the White Sox, by the way, Rick Hahn, another chip to add to his collection, made a historic deal that's never been done before in the MLB with Liam Hendricks, which is basically he gave Liam Hendricks a $15 million buyout in his third year, meaning that the White Sox could still give, because you know how it is with backloaded contracts. You pay less per year the first few years so that you pay more on the back end. Well, the White Sox said, you know what, we're so confident that you're going to be a steal for us, even if we do pay you this, we'll give you an extra $15 million at the end of the contract. Even if we buy you out, that $15 million is guaranteed, but you still take a shorter and less money for the front end of this deal. That made all the difference in the world, because the White Sox still now have operating income to go out and make moves for the next 2 years. So the White Sox are, for some reason, ahead of the game when it comes to contracts. Like, when you look at the contract that they signed Yoan Moncada to, and the contract they signed Luis Robert to, I imagine you and I are going to be looking back at that in 5 years and going, holy shit, they only paid Luis Robert, who I think is going to be an AL MVP candidate next year. They only gave him a contract that we saw Jason Hayward get triple that. I mean, I just it's hard to imagine what's going on in the South Side, that they're able to sign these type of contracts, but they're good at it.
Hell yeah, dude. So yeah, dude, Met fans, please relax. Until you get bullpen help, you might be the third. And don't forget about Washington too, dude. They just went out there and signed Kyle Schwarber. I don't know how much of an impact that's going to be, but I mean, it's a decent signing. And their biggest issue was health in their pitching rotation, because Strasburg went down. Max Scherzer was kind of in and out here and there. But Washington is still in play too. So, I understand, the Mets trying to be competitive, but I think there's at least 2, if not 3 teams right now that are better than the Mets. But that Lindor trade was still a good deal.
Yeah.
But lastly, let's get into a little bit of the NBA before we close out. And the biggest news, obviously, was the huge deal between Brooklyn, and Houston, which then later on involved Indiana. So
and Cleveland.
Basically, Houston traded James Harden to Brooklyn for Karis LeVert and a collection of players in like
Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, yeah.
Right. And then it was like 7 first-round draft picks or something insane.
It was 4 picks and 4 swaps. So essentially, they're gonna be able to get the best pick 4 out of those 8 years, and then have 4 unprotected picks. That's pretty damn good.
It really is. And then Houston turned around and traded Karis LeVert to Indiana for Victor Oladipo, who's a free agent next year.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. I thought, so obviously the consensus is going to be Brooklyn won the trade. Who's going to stop Brooklyn? Who's going to stop this offense? Great question. It's a legit question. My only question is, who between Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving is going to play defense? Because, they're probably going to put up 140 a night, but man, you can't put up 140 and give up 145. That usually counts as L's.
Yeah.
So unless Steve Nash, who's under the protege of Mike D'Antoni, who's on the bench in Brooklyn, finds some type of defensive game plan that's going to help. Yeah, James Harden looks good on paper. Yes, that big 3 looks good on paper. But, man, there's no defense. That's the only thing I'm asking. I think Houston really came out in this trade. I think if John Wall, Victor Oladipo, and DeMarcus Cousins, along with the emergence of, Christian Wood,
yeah.
If these guys come up, Houston's going to be good. I'm not saying they're going to win the West, but maybe between that 4 and 7 spot in the playoffs, I think they're going to be good. I think Houston is kind of that team where it was addition by subtraction. I don't know if you saw the clip with Shaq, but Shaq on NBA on TNT kind of called out James Harden. He said everything you asked for in Houston,
you got.
They gave it to you.
Yep.
Cried and said you needed help. So you cried and went out there and said you needed
Dwight Howard.
You needed more shooters.
Yeah.
Right. So they traded Clint Capella to go get you more shooters, and they brought in Robert Covington from Philadelphia to get you more shooters. And then you weren't happy then. So then you went out and cried and said you wanted Chris Paul. So then they went out and got you Chris Paul to work with you. And then you damn near ruined that. Like, they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. But then, Mr. I Love to Shoot 3 shot like ass the entire series against Golden State. They knocked you out and they go to the finals. Then you cried and said you wanted Russell Westbrook. So they went out there and got you Russell Westbrook. And then y'all couldn't coexist on the court. So like Shaq said, dude, we did everything we could to kind of help you out and get you to win, and you didn't do it. So you can go. And, James Harden is a phenomenal player. Excuse me, but I thought that James really got lazy before he got traded. You can make fun of him saying that he's chunky, all this and everything else, but the man can still play apparently. Yeah. But he wasn't playing as well. I thought when DeMarcus Cousins came out against James Harden after what he did, after what he said when they lost that game against LA, I would have been traded too.
Yep.
Because DeMarcus Cousins kind of comes off as that guy that I really don't want to mess with. Yeah. And if he's coming out, it's like, yo, man, you ain't finna sit here and disrespect me like that.
Yeah.
Who you think gonna win in the fight between Boogie and James Harden? Exactly.
Yeah, that's not gonna go well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think Brooklyn definitely submitted themselves to be in the same conversation with Milwaukee, with Boston as the 3 best teams in the East. I still want to see what they're going to do defensively, but ultimately Brooklyn got what they wanted. It's a steep price, but once again, I feel like history is going to repeat itself. because Brooklyn put themselves in this position before. When you went out there and you had to make this big deal to bring in Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, you gave up the future in that. It took y'all years to rebound. You're doing the same exact thing with James Harden, and I think they're gonna. Maybe it'll pay off, maybe it won't. But that's a lot to give up for James Harden like that.
Yeah,
I think it is. But we'll see if history repeats itself.
I agree. I think, one thing that I will say is that Houston didn't give up as much for some of the previous stuff that they've traded, like even look at the Chris Paul trade, right? I know the Chris Paul trade involved a lot of draft picks and, got them Russell Westbrook, but at the end of the day, Houston clearly took less to get rid of this guy because they saw that this wasn't going to work out. Let's be honest about what they actually received. I know that Brooklyn gave up Jared Allen, who for some reason went to Cleveland, who now has 7. You got Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, Jared Allen, JaVale McGee, Larry Nance. That's 5 centers that they have right now. So I don't know why the hell they did that, right, but they did it. I think, honestly, if you want my opinion, the real winner of this trade is Indiana. They gave up an expiring contract for 3 years of Karis LeVert. That is a huge W as far as I'm concerned. I think all they had to give up in return was Oladipo and a second-round pick. That is nothing compared to what you're getting production-wise. And I think you hit it on the head. Now we see what Houston has, and if Houston can do it. I think that one thing that Cousins said that struck with me is that the disrespect started way before his comments after the game, because after the game he said this team isn't good enough. But let's remember when they first signed John Wall traded for John Wall and signed Cousins, the huge thing that Harden was saying was, I'm still not sure if this team is good enough. And I came on this show and I said, this guy is on crack because this is the best team he's had in Houston since I don't know when. Because when you look at it, the team has a lot of pieces. Houston does have pieces that can win you ball games, including Christian Wood, who I think is like one of the breakout players in all the league. You got DeMarcus Cousins, who's hungry as ever. John Wall looks tremendous if you looked at him this season. And Eric Gordon is a guy that can go. PJ Tucker is a guy that can go. But I agree with you. I think the one problem with Brooklyn is there's only one ball on the court. If there was 2 balls on the court or 3 balls on the court, they'd be the best damn team in all the league. But there's one ball on the court, and I know the one question a lot of people like to ask is, who do you give the ball to in the fourth quarter? I don't care about that, right? Okay, whoever is hot, go ahead and give it to them. My problem is that, you can't score 140 every night. It's just not possible, right? There's going to be off games for all of you. We're already having a hard enough time right now getting Kyrie to even be in the building, right? To even want to play. And then on top of that, now you bring in Harden, and him and Durant haven't necessarily always had the best of a past either. So, to me, this was one organization in Brooklyn seeing their windows sort of tightening a little bit, and then able to sort of crash through that window now with Harden, and put themselves in what I believe is probably top contention in the East. But there's still a lot of games to be played, a lot of events to happen. I just think people who are jumping on this Brooklyn thing, it reminds me a lot of when the Lakers and Kobe got Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, and everyone was like, It's over. It's over. I mean, just give them the title. It's over. Steve Nash and Dwight Howard and Kobe, it's over. And I have a notorious conversation with one of my good friends, Danny Sanchez, who's a Lakers fan, and I told him there's only one ball on the court. There's not if Steve Nash doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's not a great defender. He's not a guy that's going to be like winning you ball games off the ball. Kobe Bryant's not necessarily at that point of his career was not known as a guy who's going to be, a pit bull on defense. Dwight Howard was massively overrated, and we see it now, in his progression that he was massively overrated. It reminds me a lot of people jumping the gun because on paper, oh my God, Harden and Kyrie and DeAndre Jordan. But to me, after you get to Kyrie, Harden, Durant, Joe Harris, DeAndre Jordan, Landry Shamet, there's nobody left. It's like that's 6 players for you need at the minimum 8 players for a rotation, and who knows what's going to happen with KD? Who knows what's going to happen with Kyrie? Who knows what's going to injury-wise? But not only injury-wise, we see how fickle it is for just Kyrie. Something bad happens in the world, and this guy's like, I don't feel like playing anymore. So everybody that's ready to crown them, be careful on that. But otherwise, I do agree that Brooklyn had no choice but to do this. When a team comes to you with this type of opportunity, you mortgage the future and you say, you know what? We already went all in with Steve Nash. We already went all in with Kyrie and KD. We might as well just go fully all in here at this point. And the ownership seems to support them, and I don't blame them for that. But again, we'll have to see the results. And I have to mention to you that this Calvin Kattar and Max Holloway fights is damn good fight right now. I believe going into the 5th round. I'm not exactly sure who's winning, but Max Holloway looks really good, and Calvin Kattar, his face doesn't look too good. So we'll see. Well, I'll let you know how that goes. But I just wanted to talk to you about the Harden stuff because to me, obviously it's a little bit early, and I think we'll see his debut actually tonight, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, right now, I was hoping that I could come in here talking about the Bulls winning against Oklahoma City and how happy I am, and that Patrick Williams is the next Kawhi Leonard, and I got sobered up real quickly last night when the 35-year-old coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder was like, you know what, let's call a couple timeouts here and beat my old protege or my old, I guess what would you call him, my old master, Billy Donovan.
Yeah, not protege. Yeah,
Mr. Miyagi. Yeah.
My sensei.
There you go. That's what I was going for. My sensei. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm anxious to see how what you call it does. James Harden does later on today. Man, I know Tom Thibodeau right now is probably chomping at the bit. Like, guys, I need some scoring.
Yeah,
I saw something earlier today, or actually earlier in the week, where there was a flirtatious rumor going around of the Bulls or the Knicks calling the Bulls about Zach LaVine, because obviously Zach LaVine played with Tom Thibodeau when they were in Minnesota.
Yeah,
I said, look, dude, if the Bulls were on crack enough, because Zach LaVine's their best scorer right now, if they were on crack enough to trade Zach LaVine to New York, dude, we would have to give up the Bulls are going to ask for something hefty that I don't think that the Knicks are going to pay. So I'd keep my eyes out on that, especially if the Knicks stay competitive. I think they're going to want to go out there and find them a scorer, because Tom Thibodeau, you know how he is. Yeah. He wants stars on the team. He wants guys that are going to grab on and learn onto the system. And some of these guys in New York are doing it. Some of them are not. So it's kind of, they've lost, the Bulls lost 4 in a row. The Knicks have lost 5 in a row, but I have a feeling they're going to right the ship. But again, both our teams are young.
Yeah,
that's one thing we got to remember. I just want my team to be competitive. Again, I'm not expecting the Knicks to come out and win the NBA championship and upset Boston and Brooklyn to get in there. I just want them to be competitive.
Yeah,
and just be good and win games. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for too much. I know there's going to be games where you're going to be broke as hell. When you're broke as hell for 5 games in a row, that's an issue.
Right.
And I think that's what the Knicks need to figure out.
Yeah, and I think that's encouraging though, right? Like, it's encouraging that you see progress even in the little functions, right? Like, because like all of my friends are like, oh, you're like giving the Bulls too much credit for not being shit. I'm like, no, I'm not giving them credit for not being shit. I'm giving them credit because this is what you do when you're on your way up. Like, when you're developing as a team, you take these small incremental wins. Like, yeah, we lost against Oklahoma City yesterday, but man, oh man, did we look good for 3.5 quarters. And if we could just figure it out for that last half of that last quarter, we can continue to win games. And in the East, it's not going to be too crazy to think that both our teams will be in the conversation for the 7th or 8th seed, by the time it's all said and done.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. So we'll see. Hopefully our basketball teams will be better as we come back to the show next week. Real quick before we dip, though.
Yes, sir.
The NHL season did start off.
Ooh, don't even remind me. Just you take over. I don't even want to talk about the Blackhawks. Just take over fully here because, man, it's looking ugly for them Hawks.
My boys got shut out by the Fish Sticks on Thursday night.
Yeah.
They play again tonight. That game is actually at Madison Square Garden. I think the other one was in Nassau. So this one's in Madison Square Garden. No Tony DeAngelo tonight. He's a healthy scratch because he took an unsportsmanlike penalty.
Ouch.
And David Quinn was not really happy about it. So he's going to be not in the lineup today. But the Rangers are playing some of the kids. Keandre Miller is up. They're real high on him. He's in the defensive lines. Alexis Lafreniere played the other day. He actually looked pretty good. And then, Kako is another one who I am expecting at some point to hopefully they could put I would love for them to put Kako and Lafreniere on the same line. I think they could feed off each other. One on one wing, one on the other wing. We'll see if David Quinn actually flirts with that. But I hope the Rangers come out there. I think Georgiev is in goal tonight to give Shesterkin since he kind of had a bad game, they're going to put Georgiev in there. Georgiev is a really good goaltender, so is Igor. So I'm looking forward to the game tonight. I think the Rangers are still going to be good. But as I mentioned earlier today, I know it's tough for some Blackhawks fans to drop off that R word. At the end of the day, man, Kane and Tage can only be on the team for so long before it's time to, turn the page, so to speak. But we'll see what the Blackhawks do. But, yeah, dude, they're starting to look their age. The team's starting to look old.
Yeah.
And it might be about that time to –
And no, your best player other than Patrick Kane, Kirby Dach, is hurt.
Kirby Dach,
yeah. And then Jonathan Toews is out with an undisclosed illness. That doesn't look like that's going to be resolved anytime soon. Brent Seabrook is still not healthy. Duncan Keith looks like he's 55 years old, literally. And then, on top of that, we started Malcolm Subban in goal. The first game, he gave up 5 goals. And then Colin Delia in the second game, and he gave up 5 goals. So, I don't see any positive out of this season for the Blackhawks other than seeing what we can get out of some of these young kids. And, I'll be paying close attention to that. And, by the way, a couple things just before we head out. We just talked about Karis LeVert. And I got a very unfortunate text update here. Karis LeVert is out indefinitely with a small mass on his kidney. I'm not sure what exactly that looks like, but it doesn't look good. So out indefinitely, that's got to be bad news. Also, Lonzo Ball officially placed on the shelf this week, so he's expected to miss some time, at least a few more weeks here for all of you fantasy guys. And then I'm watching right now here the decision for the Holloway and Kattar fight. Max Holloway looks like it was pretty easy. I think Kattar was already raising Holloway's hand before the fight even finished. Holloway clearly had a tremendous showing. I can't hear what he's saying, but he's talking hella shit right now. I'm imagining he wants to get back at Volkanovski because of how close those fights were with Volkanovski the first couple times around. I think that's what Max is probably talking about right now. So pretty interesting. All right, cool. Well, that was another marathon, man. It seems like a whole week passes and there's too much to talk about, and we can't not talk about everything,
Right. No, I hear you on that. But what's Real quick, what's the update on the score between Green Bay and LA?
Yeah, so let me take a look at that for us, because that one was 3-0 when we last left it, and that was actually pretty early in the game here. So let's take a look. It looks, it's actually 19-10 at halftime. Packers are leading by 9 right now, yeah, I mean, listen, 10 points in the first half is not exactly ideal, but you're only behind by 9 here. For the Rams, that's got to be pretty encouraging. I think they get the ball back at after half too, so that should help them.
Yes, sir.
All right,
guys. Well, thank you for watching again this week. We will be back next week, and when we come back next week, we'll talk more NBA. We'll get us set up for the Super Bowl, as it will be AFC NFC Championship week. And then, we'll talk more UFC and all the great news that's going on. And pretty soon, what is this, January? Pretty soon we'll be starting our spring training segment, because actual spring training baseball will be kicking off. So we'll be getting into that, and we'll go division by division, and we'll look at all the teams and whatnot, and we'll give our great predictions for that. So, for Mack, for Steve in the back, thank you as always. I am Oso Negro out here in Houston, saying so long, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Hey.